Blood spread across the snow like spilled ink as the mountain giant collapsed at her feet. Around them, flames devoured their cabin while armed men closed in through the smoke. This was how their story would end, not in the quiet safety they'd fought for, but in chaos and gunfire on Frostfang Ridge. But to understand how a desperate bride and a broken outcast reached this moment of fire and blood, we need to go back 6 months, to the day Evelyn Mercer made the most insane decision of her life. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The morning Uncle Dennis sold Evelyn to Horace Calloway, she was washing blood out of her only good dress. Not her blood. A rabbit's. She'd caught it in the wire snare behind their crooked shack on the edge of Black Hollow, and now she knelt by the half-frozen creek, scrubbing at brown stains that refused to come clean. Her hands were red and raw. February wind cut through her thin coat like it wasn't even there. She didn't know yet. Didn't know Dennis had already shaken hands with the banker. Didn't know she'd been traded like livestock to settle a debt she'd never heard of. All she knew was that her fingers hurt, her stomach was empty, and spring felt like a cruel joke someone kept promising but never delivered. Evelyn? She looked up. Dennis stood on the creek bank, hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold. He wouldn't meet her eyes. That's when she knew something bad was coming. "Come on back to the house," he said. We got company." The dress dripped freezing water down her legs as she followed him up the muddy path. Their shack leaned to one side like a drunk trying to stay upright. Smoke leaked from the chimney in thin, apologetic wisps. Everything about their life here was half-broken and barely surviving. Inside, Horace Calloway sat at their table like he owned it. Maybe he did. Horace owned most of Black Hollow by now. The bank, the land office, the general store, half the houses, and all the debts that kept people chained to this dying town. He was a neat, compact man in his 50s, with silver hair slicked back and a suit that probably cost more than Evelyn had seen in her entire life. His fingers were clean. His boots were polished. He looked completely out of place in their dirt floor shack. He smiled when Evelyn walked in, the kind of smile that made her skin crawl. "Miss Mercer," he said, standing. "How lovely to finally meet you properly." Evelyn set the wet dress on the table, not caring that it dripped. "Mr. Calloway, please sit." "I'll stand." Dennis made a strangled noise behind her. "Evelyn, don't be rude." "It's quite all right," Horace said smoothly. He didn't sit back down either. Instead, he circled the table slowly, hands clasped behind his back. "Your uncle and I have been discussing a mutually beneficial arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" "Dennis owes me a considerable sum. Gambling debts, mostly. Some unfortunate investments in ventures that didn't pan out." Horace's voice was pleasant, conversational, like they were discussing the weather. "The total comes to approximately $800. Evelyn's stomach dropped. $800 might as well have been 8,000. 8 million. They'd never had that kind of money. Would never have it. "I don't have it," she said flatly. "No, of course not." Horace stopped near the window, looking out at the gray February landscape. "Which is why your uncle and I have reached an alternative solution." The shack suddenly felt very small, very cold. "What solution?" Horace turned to face her. The pleasant smile was gone. What replaced it was worse. A look of ownership, of something already decided. "You'll marry me," he said. "The debt will be forgiven, and your uncle will be free to leave Black Hollow with a clean slate. You'll have security, a proper home, everything a young woman could want. It's quite generous, really." For a long moment, Evelyn just stared at him. Then she started laughing. It wasn't happy laughter. It was the sound of something breaking inside her chest, spilling out in jagged pieces. She laughed until tears ran down her face, until her ribs hurt, until Dennis grabbed her shoulder and shook her. "Evelyn, stop it. Did you agree to this?" She spun on her uncle, vision blurring. "Did you actually sell me to this man?" Dennis's face went pale. "It's not like that." "Did you?" "You don't understand. If I don't pay him, they'll kill me. So you traded me instead." Her voice came out flat. "Dead. Your brother's daughter, the kid you promised to take care of after the fever took my parents." "I am taking care of you," Dennis's voice cracked. "You think you got any other options?" You're 22 years old with no money, no prospects, living in a shack that's falling apart. At least this way you'll have a roof over your head. Food, safety, safety, Evelyn repeated. She looked at Horace, who watched this exchange with the detached interest of someone observing an interesting insect. With him? I'm not a cruel man, Miss Mercer, Horace said. I simply recognize an opportunity when I see one. You need security. I need a wife. Someone presentable, reasonably attractive, capable of running a household. We both benefit. And if I say no? Horace's expression didn't change. Then your uncle's debt comes due in full, tomorrow. And when he can't pay, well, he adjusted his cufflinks. The territory has laws about defaulted debts, prison time, hard labor. I imagine Dennis wouldn't last long under those conditions. Evelyn looked at her uncle, at the fear in his eyes, the way his hands shook. He was a weak man, always had been, but he was family, the only family she had left. How long do I have to decide? She asked. The ceremony is this Saturday, Horace said, 3 days from now. The entire town will attend, naturally. I've already made the arrangements. Of course he had. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have other business to attend to. Horace moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Miss Mercer, don't entertain any foolish thoughts about running. I have people watching all the roads out of Black Hollow. You wouldn't make it 5 miles. He left. The door clicked shut behind him with a sound like a coffin closing. Evelyn stood in the middle of the shack, dripping creek water onto the dirt floor, while her entire future collapsed around her. I'm sorry, Dennis whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. She didn't answer, didn't look at him, just walked to her corner of the shack, the space behind the curtain where she kept her bedroll and the few things that were hers, and sat down on the floor. 3 days. She had 3 days to figure out how to escape a trap that had already closed around her throat. Bats. Black Hollow earned its name honestly. The town sat in a valley between 2 mountain ridges, surrounded by pine forest that seemed to swallow light. In summer, the sun hit the main street for maybe 3 hours a day before the shadows took over. In winter, it barely touched the valley at all. The town was dying, had been dying for years. Once there'd been logging operations, mining claims, enough work to keep a few hundred people fed and housed. But the easy timber was gone. The mine played out. One by one, families packed up and left for better opportunities out west or back east. The ones who stayed were too poor to leave, too stubborn to quit, or too tied to Horace Calloway's debts to go anywhere. Evelyn had been stuck here since she was 14. 8 years of watching the town slowly strangle itself. She walked down Main Street on Thursday afternoon, 2 days before the wedding, looking at everything with new eyes. The general store with half its windows boarded up. The saloon that reeked of sour beer and desperation. The land office where Horace kept his main headquarters. A neat brick building that stood out like a gold tooth in a rotten mouth. People avoided her eyes as she passed. They knew. Of course they knew. Everyone in Black Hollow knew everyone else's business, especially when it involved Horace Calloway. Evelyn! She turned. Martha Yates hurried across the street, lifting her skirts to avoid the mud. Martha ran the boarding house, one of the few businesses Horace didn't own yet. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, with a heart that was kinder than she liked to admit. I heard, Martha said, catching her breath. About the wedding. News travels fast. Honey, in this town, news travels before it even happens. Martha studied her face. You all right? Do I look all right? You look like you want to burn something down. Evelyn almost smiled. Maybe I do. Martha glanced around, then lowered her voice. Listen, if you need help getting out of town, I know some people. Drivers who don't ask questions. I can scrape together maybe $40. Horace has the roads watched. Then go through the mountains. There's trails. In February? Evelyn shook her head. I'd freeze to death before I made it 10 miles. Better than marrying that snake. Is it? Martha grabbed her arm. Evelyn, you don't know what you're saying. Horace Calloway has gone through 3 wives already. 3. The first one ran off in the night and was never seen again. The second one died of a fall down the stairs. The third one, I know, Evelyn said quietly. I know what he is. Then why, Because if I run, they'll kill Dennis, and I don't have anywhere to go. She pulled her arm free, gently. I appreciate the offer, Martha. I do. But there's no way out of this. She kept walking before Martha could argue. The truth was, Evelyn had spent the last 2 days considering every possible escape. Running, hiding, stealing a horse, and making for the territorial line. Hell, she'd even thought about walking into the mountains and taking her chances with the cold and the wolves, but every plan ended the same way, with her dead or caught, or watching Dennis hang for his debts. So she'd resigned herself, accepted it. This was just how her life was going to go. She'd marry Horace Calloway. She'd smile and play the dutiful wife. And maybe, if she was lucky, she'd find a way to put a knife in his ribs before he did whatever he'd done to the previous 3 women who'd made the mistake of trusting him. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all she had. The church sat at the north end of town, a white-painted building with a crooked steeple and windows that rattled in the wind. Evelyn pushed open the door and stepped inside. Empty. Good. She needed a few minutes of quiet to think. The interior was simple. Wooden pews, a plain altar, a few oil lamps hanging from the ceiling. No decorations, no warmth. Just bare function, like everything else in Black Hollow. Evelyn sat in the front pew and closed her eyes. She wasn't religious. Hadn't been since her parents died and nobody's prayers brought them back. But sometimes the silence in churches felt different from the silence everywhere else. Less angry, less hopeless. You getting married here on Saturday? Evelyn's eyes snapped open. A man stood near the back of the church. Tall. No, not just tall. Massive. Easily 6'4" with shoulders that seemed too wide for any normal door frame. He wore canvas work pants, a heavy coat that had seen better years, and boots caked with dried mud. His hair was dark and unkempt. His face was hard angles and old scars, including one that ran from his left temple down to his jaw. But his eyes were what held her attention. Blue. Pale blue. Like ice over deep water. And utterly, completely empty. Evelyn knew who this was. Everyone in Black Hollow knew. Rowan Vance, the ghost of Frostfang Ridge. Yeah, she said, finding her voice. Saturday. He nodded slowly. Didn't move from where he stood. Rowan Vance came to town maybe once a month, always alone, always silent. He'd buy supplies at the general store, flour, coffee, ammunition, pay in cash, and leave without speaking to anyone. Children crossed the street when they saw him coming. Men dropped their eyes. Women pulled their daughters inside. The stories about him were legend, how he'd killed 3 men in a bar fight and left their bodies in the snow. How he'd murdered his own wife and buried her somewhere in the mountains. How he lived alone in a cabin beyond the ridge, surviving on hate and violence and whatever unlucky travelers wandered too close to his territory. Evelyn had seen him exactly twice before today. Both times from a distance. Both times he'd looked like exactly what the stories claimed, a monster wearing human skin. Up close, though. Up close, he just looked tired. You know what you're getting into? Rowan asked. His voice was rough, like he didn't use it often. Deep. It made something in Evelyn's chest vibrate. I know Horace Calloway is a bastard, she said, if that's what you mean. Then why marry him? Because I don't have a choice. Everyone has choices. Easy to say when you live alone on a mountain. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. Some of us have people depending on us, debts to pay, consequences we can't just walk away from. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved down the aisle, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He didn't sit, just stood a few feet away looking down at her with those cold, empty eyes. You'd rather die than marry him, he said. It wasn't a question. I'd rather a lot of things, but wanting doesn't change reality. No, Rowan agreed. It doesn't. He turned to leave. Evelyn didn't know what made her speak. Maybe desperation. Maybe the fact that this was the first conversation she'd had in 2 days where someone wasn't pitying her or avoiding her or treating her like she'd already become Horace's property. Maybe she just didn't want to be alone with her thoughts anymore. Why are you here? She asked. Rowan stopped. Needed nails. At the church? At the store. Saw you come in here, wanted to... He trailed off, then shook his head. Doesn't matter. Wanted to what? Warn you, I guess, about Calloway. I already know, Mkigo. You don't know shit. The words were flat, final. 3 wives? The first one, Rebecca, tried to leave him. They found pieces of her dress in a ravine 20 miles from town. The second one, Catherine, died of internal injuries after a fall. The third one, Anna, disappeared completely. No body, no trace, just gone. Evelyn's blood went cold. How do you know this? Oh,
But what charges she?
because I pay attention. Because I listen when people think I can't hear them. Because I'm the monster everyone warns their kids about, so they don't bother hiding the truth around me. Rowan's jaw tightened. You marry Horace Calloway, you're dead inside a year, maybe 6 months. Then what am I supposed to do? Evelyn stood, anger finally breaking through the numbness. Run into the mountains and freeze? Let them put my uncle in prison? Die trying to make it out of the territory on foot? Better than waiting for Calloway to kill you. You don't understand. I understand plenty. Rowan's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Evelyn take a step back. I understand you're standing here feeling sorry for yourself instead of fighting. I understand you've given up because the odds are bad. I understand you'd rather play victim than make the hard choice. Fuck you. The words ripped out of her before she could stop them. You don't know anything about me, about my life, about what I've been through. You live alone on your mountain like some kind of hermit, and you come down here to judge me? To tell me I'm not fighting hard enough? I'm not judging you. The hell you're not. Rowan looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time something flickered in those empty eyes, something that might have been recognition or regret. You're right, he said quietly. I don't know you, I don't know your life, and I got no business telling you what to do. He turned to leave again, and Evelyn, desperate and furious and out of options, said the most insane thing that had ever crossed her lips. Marry me! Rowan stopped dead. What? You heard me. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. Marry me, right now, before Saturday. Rowan turned around slowly. He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. You don't want to marry me, he said. I don't want to marry anyone. But if I have to marry someone, better you than Horace Calloway. You don't know me. I know you're not him. That's enough. I'm a murderer, Rowan said flatly. Or didn't you hear the stories? I heard them. I also heard you kill 3 men in self-defense after they jumped you outside the saloon. I heard your wife died in childbirth during a blizzard, and you've lived alone ever since. I heard a lot of stories, and most of them don't match up. Evelyn stepped closer, looking up at his scarred face. But here's what I know for sure. You came here to warn me about Horace. You could have just bought your nails and left, but you didn't. That doesn't make me a good man. I don't need a good man. I need a way out. I can't give you that. You can. Evelyn's hands were shaking, but she didn't look away. Marry me. Take me to your cabin. Let me work as your housekeeper or cook or whatever you need. I won't ask for anything else. Just get me away from Horace Calloway before Saturday. Rowan was silent for a long time. Then he said, You're serious. Dead serious. You understand what you're asking? You'd be living in the middle of nowhere, no neighbors, no town. Just mountains and snow and silence. Most people can't handle that. Can't handle being that alone. I can handle it. You'd be stuck with me, a stranger, someone everyone calls a monster. Are you? Evelyn asked. A monster? Rowan's expression didn't change. Sometimes I don't know anymore. It wasn't the answer she'd hoped for, but it was honest. And right now, honesty was worth more than comfort. Look, she said, in 3 days, Horace Calloway is going to marry me whether I want it or not. He's going to take me to his house, and eventually, he's going to kill me. Those are the facts. Those are my options. She took a breath. Unless you say yes. Why would I say yes? Because you came here to warn me. Because you know what Horace is. Because... She hesitated. Because you look as alone as I feel, and maybe we could help each other. Rowan studied her face, those ice blue eyes searching for something. A trick, maybe. A trap. Some reason this didn't make sense. If I say yes, he said slowly, there's no going back. You understand that? Once we're married, Horace can't touch you. But you're mine, legally, completely. You'd be stuck with that. Better stuck with you than dead with him. You don't know that. Then let me find out. Another long silence. Outside, wind rattled the church windows. Somewhere in town, a dog barked. Rowan reached into his coat and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He counted out bills, 1, 2, 3, and handed them to Evelyn. What's this? Payment, he said. For the wedding. Minister charges $5. This should cover it. Evelyn stared at the money, then at him. You're serious? You asked. I'm answering. Rowan's face was unreadable. We do this now before you change your mind, before I do. I won't change my mind. Then find the minister. Tell him we're getting married today. I'll wait here. Evelyn's legs felt like water. Her hands were numb. This was insane, completely insane. She was going to marry a man she'd spoken to for less than 15 minutes. A man everyone called a murderer. A man who lived alone in the mountains like some kind of wild animal. But when she thought about the alternative, about Horace's clean hands and cold smile and the 3 wives who'd disappeared, her choice became very clear. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She ran. Chaos. Minister Ford didn't want to do it. Absolutely not, he said, shaking his head so hard his jowls wobbled. I won't perform a marriage ceremony without proper notice, without witnesses, without... I'll pay you $20, Evelyn said. Ford stopped mid-sentence. $20? Cash. Right now. All you have to do is say the words and sign the paper. The minister's eyes narrowed. Why the rush? You in some kind of trouble? I'm getting married on Saturday to Horace Calloway. I know. I'm performing that ceremony. Unless you perform this one first. Evelyn put the bills on his desk. Today, now. No questions. Ford stared at the money, then at her, then at the money again. Greed won. Who's the groom? Rowan Vance. The color drained from Ford's face. The hell you say? He's waiting at the church. All you have to do is marry us and file the papers. That's it. You're insane. That man is... I know what he is. I don't care. Are you going to do this or not? Ford looked at the money again. $20 was probably more than he made in a month from his sparse congregation. Fine, he muttered, scooping up the bills. But when Horace Calloway comes asking questions, I'm telling him you forced me. Tell him whatever you want. Just make it legal. They walked back to the church together. Ford muttering the whole way about impropriety and hasty decisions, and young people who didn't understand consequences. Evelyn ignored him. Rowan was still waiting inside. He'd moved to the front of the church, standing near the altar with his hands in his pockets. He looked up when they entered. This him? Ford asked nervously. Yeah. The minister swallowed hard. Mr. Vance, I'm going to need some information. Full name, age, place of residence. Rowan Nathaniel Vance, 34, Frostfang Ridge. His voice was flat, bored. Anything else? No. That should be sufficient. Ford fumbled with his book, nearly dropping it. Let's get this over with. The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. Ford raced through the words like he was trying to outrun a storm. Rowan repeated his vows in that same flat monotone, eyes fixed somewhere over Evelyn's shoulder. Evelyn's own voice shook, but she got through it. Do you have a ring? Ford asked. No, Rowan said. Well, that's unconventional, but I suppose... Use this. Rowan pulled something from his pocket, a simple band of twisted iron, rough and unpolished. It'll fit. He slid it onto Evelyn's finger. It was too big, but it stayed. By the power vested in me, Ford said quickly, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss the bride. Rowan looked at Evelyn. She looked back. Neither of them moved. Or not, Ford said. That's fine too. Just sign here. They signed. Ford signed. He folded the marriage certificate with shaking hands and shoved it into his coat. I'll file this tomorrow, he said. It'll be legal by Monday. Make it legal today, Rowan said. Something in his voice made Ford go pale again. Yes, of course. Today. Absolutely. He fled. The church fell silent. Evelyn and Rowan stood at the altar, married but not touching, looking at each other like strangers who'd just survived the same disaster. "You can still change your mind," Rowan said. "So can you." "I won't." "Neither will I." He nodded. "Then get your things. We leave in an hour." "I don't have much." "Doesn't matter. Bring what you can carry." He moved toward the door, then paused. "And Evelyn?" "Yeah?" "Don't tell anyone where we're going. Don't say goodbye. Just leave, understand?" She understood. If Horace found out before they were gone, he'd stop them. He'd drag her back. He'd make sure this marriage meant nothing. "I'll be ready," she said. Rowan left without another word. Evelyn stood alone in the church, looking down at the iron ring on her finger. She'd just married a monster, or saved herself from one. She wasn't sure which, but in less than an hour, she'd find out. Evelyn owned almost nothing: a change of clothes, a hairbrush, a small knife her father had given her before he died, a photograph of her parents in a cracked frame. Everything fit in a canvas sack that weighed maybe 10 pounds. Dennis wasn't home when she came back to the shack, probably at the saloon, drinking away his guilt. Good. She didn't want to see him, didn't want to explain or argue or listen to him beg forgiveness. She left a note on the table. 4 words. "I'm safe. Don't follow." Then she walked away from the only home she'd known for 8 years and didn't look back. Rowan was waiting at the edge of town with 2 horses. One was a massive draft animal that looked like it could pull a house. The other was smaller, leaner, with intelligent eyes and a nervous way of moving. "You know how to ride?" Rowan asked. "Some." "Good enough." He handed her the reins to the smaller horse. "Her name's Ash. She's steady. Just give her head and she'll follow mine." Evelyn climbed into the saddle. The horse shifted under her weight, but didn't spook. Rowan mounted his own horse, a process that looked effortless despite his size, and turned north without a word. They rode. No one stopped them. No one called out. The few people on the street looked away, pretending not to notice. Within minutes, Black Hollow disappeared behind them. The road north climbed steadily into the mountains. Snow appeared first in patches, then in drifts, then in deep banks that forced them to slow down. The temperature dropped. Wind cut through Evelyn's coat like it wasn't there. She didn't complain. Rowan didn't speak, just rode ahead, shoulders hunched against the cold, guiding them along trails that seemed to appear and disappear like secrets. By the time full dark fell, they were deep in the mountains, so deep that Black Hollow felt like something from another lifetime. "How much further?" Evelyn asked. Her voice sounded too loud in the silence. "Another hour. In the dark?" "Moon's bright enough, and the horses know the way." They kept climbing. The trail narrowed. On one side, mountain slope rose into darkness. On the other, a cliff dropped away into nothing. Evelyn tried not to look down. Finally, just when her hands were so cold she could barely hold the reins, she saw light ahead. A cabin. It sat in a clearing surrounded by pine trees, smoke rising from a stone chimney. The structure was solid. Thick logs, a peaked roof, shuttered windows. Not large, but well built. The kind of place that could survive mountain winters. Rowan dismounted and led both horses to a small barn behind the cabin. Evelyn followed, legs stiff from riding. Inside the barn, Rowan worked efficiently, removing tack, brushing down the horses, giving them feed and water. He moved like someone who'd done this 1,000 times, hands steady even in the cold. "You can go inside, Bicham," he said without looking at her. "Door's open." "I can help. Go inside." It wasn't cruel, just final. Evelyn left him to it. The cabin's interior was warm, almost shockingly warm after hours in the freezing wind. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, filling the single room with orange light. The space was simple but clean. A large bed in one corner, a table and 2 chairs. Shelves lined with supplies, canned goods, flour, coffee, ammunition. A rifle mounted above the door. Furs piled near the fireplace. No decorations, no personal touches. Nothing that suggested a human being lived here instead of just survived. Evelyn set her bag down and moved to the fire, holding her hands out to the heat. This was her home now. This cabin. These mountains. This silence. And the stranger she'd married to escape a worse fate. The door opened. Rowan came in, bringing a blast of cold air with him. He closed the door, latched it, and stood there for a moment like he was surprised to find someone else in his space. "You hungry?" he asked finally. "Starving." He moved to the shelves and pulled down supplies. Within minutes, he had coffee brewing and beans heating in a pot over the fire. He worked in silence, efficient as always, never meeting her eyes. They ate at the table. The food was simple but good, hot, filling. Evelyn hadn't realized how hungry she was until she started eating. "Thank you," she said. Rowan grunted. Might have been acknowledgement, might have been nothing. "For the food, I mean, and for saying yes, back in town. Don't thank me yet." "Why not?" He looked at her then, those cold blue eyes catching firelight. "Because you don't know what you've signed up for. Living up here, with me. Most people can't handle it." "I'm not most people." "We'll see." He stood, collecting the dishes. "You take the bed. I'll sleep by the fire." "We're married," Evelyn said. "You don't have to—" "I'm sleeping by the fire." His tone left no room for argument. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard work if you're staying." He turned away. Conversation over. Evelyn moved to the bed. It was larger than she'd expected, covered in thick furs that smelled like pine and smoke. She climbed under them fully dressed, too exhausted to care. From across the room, she watched Rowan add wood to the fire. He moved like a ghost, silent, efficient, alone even when someone else was watching. This was the man she'd married. This was the life she'd chosen. And as sleep finally dragged her under, Evelyn realized she had no idea if she'd made the best decision of her life or the worst, but at least she was still alive to find out. Outside, wind howled through Frostfang Ridge like something hunting. Inside, the fire burned, and two strangers who'd become husband and wife lay in the same room, separated by shadows and silence and all the things neither of them knew how to say. Evelyn woke to the sound of an axe hitting wood. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her was rough timber instead of cracked plaster. The air smelled like pine smoke and coffee instead of mildew and desperation. Then memory crashed back. The wedding, the ride through darkness, the cabin on Frostfang Ridge. She sat up. Pale morning light filtered through the shuttered windows. The fire had burned down to embers. Rowan's bedroll by the hearth was already rolled up and stowed. Outside, the axe struck again. Rhythmic, relentless. Evelyn pushed off the furs and immediately regretted it. The cabin was freezing. Her breath came out in clouds. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and moved to the window, carefully opening the shutter a crack. Rowan stood in the clearing, swinging the axe like it weighed nothing. He'd stripped down to just a shirt despite the cold, sleeves rolled up, and each swing sent a log splitting clean in two. A massive pile of firewood already sat stacked against the cabin wall. He was adding to it like he planned to survive the apocalypse. She watched him work. There was something almost mechanical about it. Swing, split, toss, swing, split, toss. No wasted motion, no pause. Just relentless efficiency. This was her husband. The thought still felt unreal. Evelyn let the shutter fall closed and turned back to the cabin's interior. In daylight, she could see details she'd missed last night. The way everything had its place. Tools hung on pegs, supplies organized by type. Not a single item out of order. The floor was swept clean. The dishes from last night were already washed and stacked. Even the bedroll was tied with military precision. This wasn't just a cabin. It was a fortress against chaos. Or maybe against loneliness. She found the coffee pot still warm on the edge of the fire. Poured herself a cup. It was strong enough to strip paint, but she drank it anyway. The axe stopped. A minute later, the door opened. Rowan came in carrying an armload of split wood. He saw her standing there and stopped. "You're up," he said. "Hard to sleep through all that noise." "Sorry, should have waited." "Don't apologize, it's your cabin." Rowan dumped the wood by the fireplace and stood there awkwardly, like he'd forgotten what to do with another person in his space. Finally, he moved to the shelves and started pulling down supplies. "You know how to cook?" he asked. "Some." "Good, because I can't." He set flour, salt, and a tin of lard on the table. "There's a root cellar under that trap door. Potatoes, onions, dried meat, make whatever you want." "What are you going to do?" "Check the traps. Might be gone a few hours." He pulled on his heavy coat. "Don't go outside without boots and a coat. Temperature's dropping. Storm coming tonight. How can you tell? I can tell. He grabbed the rifle from above the door, checked it, and slung it over his shoulder. Rowan, Evelyn said. He paused at the door. Are there rules? Things I shouldn't do? Places I shouldn't go? He was quiet for a moment. Don't touch the shed behind the cabin. It's locked. Stays locked. Why? Because I said so. The edge in his voice made it clear the conversation was over. He left, closing the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Evelyn stood alone in the cabin, holding her coffee, staring at the closed door. Don't touch the shed. Every muscle in her body suddenly wanted to touch the shed. She forced herself to focus on breakfast instead, pulled up the trap door and climbed down into the root cellar. It was cramped and dark, but well stocked. Sacks of potatoes, strings of onions, jars of preserved vegetables, dried meat wrapped in cloth. Enough food to last months if rationed carefully. She grabbed what she needed and climbed back up. Cooking in the cabin was a challenge. The only heat source was the fireplace, which meant everything had to be done in a cast iron skillet or pot. No temperature control. No timer. Just trial and error and hoping nothing burned. Evelyn managed to produce something edible, fried potatoes with onions and bits of the dried meat. It wasn't pretty, but it was hot, and it filled the cabin with smells that weren't just smoke and pine. She ate alone at the table, listening to the silence. This was going to be her life now. Cooking, cleaning, waiting for Rowan to come back from wherever he went. Existing in this tiny space with a man who barely spoke and locked sheds he wouldn't explain. Better than being Horace Calloway's fourth wife. She repeated that to herself until she almost believed it. After breakfast, she explored the cabin more thoroughly. There wasn't much to explore. One room, maybe 20 feet by 20 feet, with everything visible at a glance. But she looked anyway, trying to understand the man who lived here. No books, no letters, no photographs. Nothing personal at all except a small wooden box on the highest shelf. She stood on a chair to reach it, expecting what? Money? Weapons? Some secret that would explain everything? Inside were three things. A woman's ring, too delicate for Rowan's massive hands. A small carved wooden bird, and a lock of dark hair tied with faded ribbon. Evelyn closed the box quickly and put it back. She'd married a widower. She'd known that from the stories. But seeing the evidence, the ring, the hair, the bird that someone had made with careful hands, made it real in a way that rumors never had. Rowan had loved someone once, loved her enough to keep these pieces of her locked away where no one else could see, and that someone was dead. Evelyn climbed down from the chair feeling like she'd invaded something sacred. She left the box alone after that. The day stretched on. She cleaned the cabin even though it didn't need cleaning, reorganized the shelves even though they were already organized, made bread dough and left it to rise by the fire. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind from wandering to the locked shed behind the cabin. Don't touch it, Rowan had said. But why? What was in there that needed locking? Tools, weapons, bodies? Stop it, she told herself. You're being paranoid. But the stories from Black Hollow kept creeping back. The murdered wife, the bodies in the snow. The savage who lived alone because he was too dangerous to be around people. What if the stories were true? What if she'd traded one monster for another? The door opened. Evelyn jumped, nearly dropping the knife she'd been using to peel potatoes. Rowan came in with 2 rabbits slung over his shoulder, already skinned and gutted. He hung them on a hook near the door and shrugged off his coat. Storm's moving in faster than I thought, he said. We'll be snowed in by tomorrow. For how long? Week, maybe 2. 2 weeks, trapped in this cabin, with him. I made bread, Evelyn said, because she didn't know what else to say. Rowan looked at the dough rising by the fire. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or something else. Been a while since I had fresh bread, he said quietly. He moved to the table and started preparing the rabbits for cooking. His hands were steady despite their size, cutting meat away from bone with practiced efficiency. Evelyn watched him work. Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why'd you say yes? Yesterday, in the church. Rowan didn't look up. Why'd you ask? I asked first. He was quiet for a long time, focusing on the knife work. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. Because I know what Horace Calloway is, and I know what happens to women who marry him. He set down the knife. And because you looked at me like I was a person instead of a monster. That doesn't happen often. You're not a monster. You don't know that? I've seen monsters, Evelyn said. Real ones. You're not one of them. Rowan finally looked at her, those ice-blue eyes searching her face like he was trying to figure out if she was lying. We'll see, he said. Winter up here has a way of bringing out the truth in people. He went back to preparing the meat. Evelyn wanted to ask more. About his wife. About the shed. About the stories that followed him like ghosts. But something in his posture told her the conversation was over. They ate dinner in silence. The bread had turned out well, and Rowan ate 3 slices without comment. The rabbit was gamey, but good. Outside, wind began to howl. After dinner, Rowan added more wood to the fire and settled into his bedroll. Evelyn took the bed again, burrowing under the furs. Rowan? Yeah, thank you, for getting me out of Black Hollow. He didn't answer, just lay there in the firelight, staring at the ceiling. Evelyn closed her eyes and tried to sleep while the storm moved in. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of snow and routine. The storm hit hard, wind that shook the cabin walls, snow that piled up past the windows, cold that seeped through every crack despite the fire. They were completely cut off, buried alive in white. Rowan spent most of his time outside, digging paths to the barn, feeding the horses, hauling water from the creek before it froze solid. He'd come back in covered in snow, strip off his wet outer layers, and sit by the fire until he stopped shaking. Evelyn tried to make herself useful. She cooked, cleaned, mended a tear in one of Rowan's shirts. Small things, necessary things. But the cabin was so small and there was so little to do that she often found herself just sitting by the fire, staring at nothing. The silence was crushing. In Black Hollow, there'd always been noise, dogs barking, wagons creaking, people arguing. Even in the shack with Dennis, there'd been the saloon nearby, drunk men singing, life happening just outside the walls. Here, there was nothing, just wind, fire, the occasional creak of timber, and Rowan, who moved through the cabin like a ghost, barely speaking, barely acknowledging her presence except to grunt when she asked him questions. On the 4th day, Evelyn broke. "Do you ever talk?" she demanded. Rowan looked up from the piece of wood he was whittling. "What?" "Talk. Have a conversation. Use more than 3 words at a time." "I talk." "No, you grunt. There's a difference." He frowned. "What do you want me to say?" "Anything. Tell me about yourself. Tell me why you live up here. Tell me—" She stopped herself before she said about your wife. "Tell me something. Anything. Because if I have to sit in this silence for another week, I'm going to lose my mind." Rowan set down the wood and knife. For a moment, she thought he'd ignore her, just go back to his carving and leave her drowning in quiet. Instead, he said, "What do you want to know?" Evelyn hadn't expected that. She scrambled for a question. "How long have you lived here?" 5 years. "And before that?" "I worked logging operations, moved around, ended up in Black Hollow." His jaw tightened. "Met Sarah there, got married, bought land up here, started building the cabin." Sarah. So that was her name. "What happened?" Evelyn asked quietly. "She died." "I know, but how?" Rowan was silent for so long that Evelyn thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Childbirth, middle of winter. Blizzard came in fast and we couldn't get down the mountain. I tried—" His voice cracked. "I tried everything, but she hemorrhaged and I couldn't stop it, couldn't save her, couldn't save the baby." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Wasn't your fault." "Still, that's terrible." Rowan picked up the wood again, turning it over in his hands. "Town blamed me. Said I should have brought her down before the storm hit. Said I was reckless. Stupid. Some people said I killed her on purpose." "That's insane." "Maybe, but grief makes people cruel, and I was an easy target." He started carving again, slow, deliberate strokes. "After the funeral, I came back up here. Haven't gone down much since. Until yesterday." Until yesterday, Evelyn watched him work. The piece of wood was starting to take shape. Something with wings. A bird, maybe. "What are you making?" she asked. "Don't know yet." Hands need something to do. You're good at it. Had lots of practice. Another silence fell, but this one felt different, less oppressive, more like shared space instead of empty void. Your turn, Rowan said. My turn what? Ask me something or tell me something. That's how conversations work. Evelyn almost smiled. Okay, what's in the shed? His hand stopped moving. I told you not to go near it. I haven't, but I want to know why. It's private. We're married. Doesn't that mean we don't have secrets? No, Rowan said flatly. It means we share a cabin. Everything else is earned. The words stung more than they should have. Evelyn looked away, feeling foolish. I'm not trying to be cruel, Rowan said after a moment. But there are things I'm not ready to talk about. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Fine. Evelyn, I said fine. She stood. I'm going to bed. She crossed to the bed and burrowed under the furs, turning her back to the fire. Behind her, she heard Rowan sigh, heard him set down the carving, heard him add wood to the fire, but he didn't apologize, and she didn't expect him to. The storm finally broke on the 6th day. Evelyn woke to sunlight, actual sunlight, not the gray half-light that had filtered through the clouds for nearly a week. She sat up and saw Rowan already at the window, looking out. It's clearing, he said. Thank God. I need to check the trails, make sure nothing's blocked. Might take all day. Can I come with you? He turned to look at her, surprised. Why? Because I've been trapped in this cabin for 6 days, and if I don't see something besides these 4 walls, I'm going to start screaming. Rowan considered this. You know how to snowshoe? No. You'll learn. An hour later, they were trudging through snow that came up to Evelyn's knees in some places. Rowan had strapped strange contraptions to her boots, woven frames that spread her weight across the snow and kept her from sinking completely. It was exhausting work, and she had to stop frequently to catch her breath. Rowan never complained, just waited patiently while she recovered, then kept moving. The mountain was beautiful in the sunlight. Everything sparkled. The air was so clean it almost hurt to breathe. And the silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was peaceful. They checked the trails leading down toward Black Hollow. Several trees had fallen, blocking the path completely. We'll have to clear these before anyone can get up or down, Rowan said. Good. He glanced at her. You don't want visitors? Do you? No. Then we agree on something. They worked together to move the smaller branches, but the main trunks would need an axe and more time. Rowan marked the spots and they moved on. By late afternoon, they'd circled back toward the cabin. Evelyn was exhausted, her legs shaking, her lungs burning from the cold air. Almost there, Rowan said. Thank God. Then he stopped. Evelyn nearly ran into him. What? He was staring at something ahead. Following his gaze, she saw tracks in the snow. Big tracks. Paw prints the size of dinner plates. Wolf? She whispered. Bear. In winter? Sometimes they wake up if they're hungry enough. Rowan unslung his rifle. Stay close. They moved carefully, following the tracks. They led around the cabin, past the barn, straight to the shed, the locked shed Rowan had forbidden her from touching. The tracks circled it completely. Deep gouges marked the door where the bear had tried to force its way inside. Rowan examined the damage, face unreadable. The lock was still intact, but the door frame was splintered. What's in there that a bear would want? Evelyn asked. Nothing. Sometimes they're just curious. That's not curiosity, that's... Drop it, Evelyn. But she couldn't, because now she'd seen the way Rowan was looking at the shed. Not angry, not protective. Afraid. What the hell was in there? We should get inside, Rowan said. Bear might still be close. They hurried to the cabin. Rowan barricaded the door and checked the rifle, making sure it was loaded. Will it come back? Evelyn asked. Maybe. Probably not. But we'll keep watch tonight just in case. That night, they took turns staying awake. Rowan took the first shift, sitting by the window with the rifle across his lap. Evelyn tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every sound outside made her jump. Around midnight, Rowan woke her for her shift. Anything? She asked. Nothing, but stay alert anyway. He lay down by the fire and was asleep in minutes. Evelyn sat at the window watching the moonlit clearing. The shadows between the trees seemed to move. Every time the wind shifted, she tensed. Hours passed. Nothing happened. But she couldn't stop thinking about the shed, about the way the bear had tried to get inside, about Rowan's fear. Around 4 in the morning, she heard something. Scraping. Evelyn froze, listening hard. There it was again. A slow, deliberate scraping sound, coming from outside. She grabbed the rifle and moved to the window, peered out into the darkness. Nothing. The scraping continued, regular, rhythmic. It took her a moment to realize it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from Rowan. She turned. He was still lying by the fire, but his hands were moving, slow, deliberate motions, like he was carving something in his sleep. His eyes were closed. His face was tense. The scraping sound came from his rough palms sliding against each other. Evelyn set down the rifle and crouched beside him. Rowan? He didn't wake, just kept making those carving motions over and over. She touched his shoulder gently. Rowan, wake up. His eyes snapped open. For a moment, he looked completely lost. Then recognition flooded back and he jerked away from her touch. What are you doing? He demanded. You were making noises like you were carving something. He looked at his hands, seemed surprised to find them empty. Sorry, he muttered. Didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. I was already up. She sat back. Does that happen a lot? Sometimes. The carving thing? Yeah. Is it? She hesitated. Is it something to do with the shed? Rowan's expression went cold. Go back to sleep, Evelyn. I'm just trying to understand. I said go back to sleep. He stood and walked to the window, effectively ending the conversation. Evelyn returned to the bed, frustrated and confused. But as she lay there in the darkness, listening to the fire crack and pop, she couldn't shake the image of Rowan's hands moving through empty air, carving something only he could see. 2 more weeks passed. The snow melted slowly. The days grew incrementally longer, and the silence between Evelyn and Rowan hardened into something almost comfortable. They developed routines. She cooked breakfast while he fed the horses. He chopped wood while she did laundry and melted snow water. They ate dinner together, then separated to their corners of the cabin, him carving by the fire, her mending clothes or reading from the single book she'd found hidden under the bed, a battered copy of adventure stories that had probably belonged to Sarah. They didn't talk much, but they existed together without hostility, and that felt like progress. Evelyn stopped asking about the shed, but she didn't stop noticing things, like how Rowan disappeared into it every night after he thought she was asleep. She'd hear the door unlock, hear him go inside, hear the scraping sounds that lasted for hours. She never confronted him about it, partly because she'd promised herself she wouldn't push, partly because she was afraid of what she might find if she looked too closely at the cracks in his armor. Then the weather turned. One afternoon in early March, the temperature dropped 15 degrees in an hour. The wind shifted, bringing the smell of snow and something else, something sharp and wrong. Rowan came in from checking the traps, looking worried. Big storm coming, he said. Worse than the last one. How bad? Bad enough we might lose the barn roof. Maybe worse. They spent the rest of the day preparing, reinforcing the barn, bringing extra firewood inside, making sure the animals had enough feed to last a week. By nightfall, the first flakes started falling. By midnight, it was a blizzard. Wind hammered the cabin like fists. Snow came sideways, piling against the walls in drifts that climbed toward the roof. The temperature plummeted. Even with the fire roaring, frost formed on the inside of the windows. Evelyn huddled under every blanket they had and still couldn't stop shivering. Rowan paced like a caged animal, checking the door, checking the windows, feeding the fire. The horses, Evelyn started. They're fine. Barn's solid. You sure? No? Around 2 in the morning, something crashed outside, a sound like thunder, but sharper, more final. Rowan grabbed his coat. Don't, Evelyn said. You can't go out there. If the barn roof collapsed, the horses will freeze. So will you. I'll be fast. He was gone before she could argue further. Evelyn waited by the door, watching through the crack, seeing nothing but white chaos. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. He should be back by now. 20 minutes. Terror started to creep up her spine. 25. She was reaching for her own coat when the door slammed open. Rowan stumbled inside and collapsed. Blood spread across the floor in a dark pool. "Oh, God!" Evelyn dropped beside him. "What happened?" "Tree," he gasped. "Fell! Caught my leg!" She could see it now. His left leg bent at a wrong angle, bone visible through torn fabric and skin. His face was gray with shock. "We need to get you warm," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can you move?" "Don't think so." "Try." Between the two of them, they managed to drag him closer to the fire. Evelyn grabbed every blanket she could find and piled them on him. His skin was ice cold. His breathing was shallow. "I need to set the leg," she said. "You know how?" "No, but if I don't, you'll lose it." Rowan's eyes met hers. Through the pain, she saw something like respect, or maybe just resignation. "Do it," he said. It was the worst thing she'd ever done. She had to cut away his pants, exposing the full extent of the damage. The bone had broken clean through the skin. Blood kept welling up no matter how much she pressed. She had no medical supplies, no painkillers, nothing but her hands and desperation. She pulled the bone back into alignment while Rowan bit down on a leather strap to keep from screaming. Used strips torn from a shirt to bind the leg to a piece of firewood as a splint. Stitched the worst of the cuts with thread, and a needle she sterilized in the fire, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold them. Through it all, Rowan never passed out. Just lay there, jaw clenched, sweat pouring down his face despite the cold, eyes fixed on the ceiling. When she finally finished, her hands were covered in his blood. "Done," she whispered. Rowan didn't respond. His eyes had closed. For a terrifying moment, she thought he'd stopped breathing. Then his chest rose, fell, rose again. He was alive. Barely. Evelyn cleaned the blood off her hands and collapsed beside him, too exhausted to move. Outside, the blizzard raged on. Inside, the fire burned, and between them, something had shifted. She'd saved his life, and he knew it. She stayed awake all night watching him breathe, changing the bandages when blood soaked through, feeding the fire so he wouldn't freeze. Around dawn, his eyes opened. "You're still here," he said, voice rough. "Where else would I be?" Smart women run when they see that much blood. Good thing I'm not that smart. Something that might have been a smile touched his lips. Then it faded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You might still lose the leg. If I do, it won't be because you didn't try." He reached for her hand. His fingers were cold but steady. And for the first time since they'd met, Evelyn felt like maybe, just maybe, she hadn't made a terrible mistake marrying this broken man on his haunted mountain. The storm lasted 3 days. During that time, Rowan's legs swelled and turned purple. Fever set in on the second day, burning so hot he soaked through the blankets with sweat. He drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling things that didn't make sense. Sarah's name. The baby. Something about roses. Evelyn did everything she could. Changed the bandages, forced water and broth down his throat when he was lucid enough to swallow. Kept him warm. Prayed to a god she didn't believe in that infection wouldn't take him. On the third day, the fever broke. Rowan opened his eyes around noon, clear-headed for the first time since the accident. "Still alive," he croaked. "Looks like it." "Horses?" "Fine. I've been feeding them." He tried to sit up, failed. "How's the leg?" "Swollen, purple, but no gangrene, I think." "You think?" "I'm not a doctor, Rowan. I'm doing the best I can." He settled back down. "Sorry. I know you are. Say." She brought him water and watched him drink. His hands still shook, but the color was coming back to his face. "How long was I out?" he asked. 3 days. Jesus. "The storm cleared this morning. We're snowed in pretty bad, but we'll survive." Rowan looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tighten. "You could have left," he said quietly. "What?" "When I was unconscious. You could have taken the horse, headed down the mountain, gone back to Black Hollow. Nobody would have blamed you." "I'm not going back there." "You didn't know I'd wake up. For all you knew, I was dying, and you stayed anyway." Evelyn didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. "Why?" Rowan pressed. "Because you're my husband." "That's not a reason. We barely know each other." "Maybe not, but you saved me from Horace. Seemed only fair to return the favor. Rowan closed his eyes. I didn't save you. I just gave you a different kind of prison. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? Trapped on a mountain with a stranger who won't talk, who keeps secrets, who makes you sleep alone while he haunts a locked shed every night. Evelyn went very still. You know I hear you. Of course I know. I'm not stupid. Then why keep doing it? Because I have to. His voice cracked. Because if I don't, I'll... He stopped, took a breath, started again. There are things I can't explain, not because I don't want to, because I don't know how, because saying them out loud makes them real in a way I'm not ready for. He opened his eyes. But you saved my life, so I owe you the truth, even if I can't give you all of it. Okay, Evelyn said carefully. The shed, Rowan said. I'm not hiding bodies. I'm not building weapons. I'm carving. Carving what? A cradle. Of all the things she had expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. A cradle, she repeated. For the baby that never came. For Sarah. For... His voice broke completely. For the family I lost. I started it after the funeral. Been working on it every night since. Can't seem to finish it. Can't seem to stop trying. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. I'm not dangerous, Rowan continued. I'm just broken, and I thought if I could finish the cradle, maybe I could put the pieces back together. But it's been 5 years, and I'm still carving the same piece of wood, trying to make it perfect, trying to make it mean something. Can I see it? Evelyn whispered. Rowan's jaw tightened. Then slowly, he nodded. Help me up. You can't walk. I'll crawl if I have to. You want to see, I'll show you. But I'm not letting you go alone. It took 20 minutes to get him outside. He leaned heavily on Evelyn, his broken leg dragging uselessly, face gray with pain and effort. But he refused to stop. They reached the shed. Rowan pulled out a key and unlocked it with shaking hands. The door swung open. Inside, surrounded by wood shavings and tools, sat the most beautiful thing Evelyn had ever seen. A cradle. Cedar wood, polished to a soft glow. Carved with roses climbing up the sides. Eagles in flight above. Forests and mountains and a sleeping child protected by a mother bear standing guard. It was perfect. It was heartbreaking. Evelyn stepped inside, running her fingers over the carvings. Every detail was exquisite. Every line showed hours, years of careful work. It's beautiful, she breathed. It's unfinished, Rowan said from the doorway. I keep finding mistakes, things that need fixing. Rowan, there are no mistakes. There have to be, because if it's finished, then, his voice cracked, then I have to let them go. Evelyn turned to look at him. This massive man leaning against the doorframe, tears running down his scarred face, unable to stop making something beautiful for people who would never use it. She crossed to him and wrapped her arms around him. He stiffened. Then slowly his arms came up, held her. And for the first time since Sarah died, Rowan Vance broke down completely. He sobbed into Evelyn's shoulder while she held him upright, both of them standing in the doorway of a shed filled with grief and cedar shavings and unfinished hope. I'm sorry, he gasped. I'm so sorry. I thought I could be strong enough. Thought I could... You are strong, Evelyn said fiercely. You're the strongest person I've ever met, but you don't have to be strong alone anymore, you understand? You don't have to carry this by yourself. I don't know how to let anyone help. Then learn. She held him until the tears stopped, until his breathing steadied, until he could stand on his own again. Come on, she said gently. Let's get you back inside before you freeze. They made their slow way back to the cabin. She settled him by the fire and made him drink water. His face was exhausted, hollowed out, like he'd just survived a war. Maybe he had. I'm going to sleep now, then, he said. Okay. But before he closed his eyes, he reached for her hand. Thank you, he said. For staying. For not running. For everything. Evelyn squeezed his hand. You're welcome. He fell asleep still holding on to her, and Evelyn sat beside him, watching the fire burn, thinking about cradles and grief and broken men who carved beauty out of pain. Outside, the snow began to melt. Inside, something new began to grow. Spring came slowly to Frostfang Ridge, like it was afraid of what it might find. The snow melted in patches, revealing dead grass and mud beneath. Ice broke up in the creek with sounds like gunshots. Birds returned, tentative at first, then in greater numbers. And the silence that had ruled the mountain all winter began to crack under the weight of running water and wind through pine branches. Rowan's leg healed crooked. He could walk again by mid-April, but with a limp that would never go away. The bone had set wrong despite Evelyn's best efforts, leaving him with a slight hitch in his step and pain that flared up when storms were coming. He never complained about it. Could have been worse, he said when Evelyn apologized for the 100th time. Could be dead. Still, if I'd known what I was doing, you saved my life with what you had. That's enough. They were sitting outside the cabin, watching the sun set over the mountains. A rare moment of peace, the kind that had become more common since the night Rowan had shown her the cradle. Things had changed between them after that. Not dramatically, not like some switch had flipped, but in small ways that accumulated into something bigger. He talked more, not constantly, but enough that the silences felt comfortable instead of oppressive. He told her stories about his logging days, about places he'd seen before settling on the ridge, about Sarah carefully, like speaking her name was still painful but necessary. Evelyn talked too, about her parents, about growing up in Black Hollow, about the 8 years of slow suffocation that had led her to that moment in the church when she'd asked a stranger to marry her. They were learning each other, piece by piece, scar by scar. And somewhere in that process, Evelyn realized she didn't want to leave anymore. "You think anyone's looking for us?" she asked. Rowan whittled a piece of wood, his hands moving with that familiar rhythm. "Probably. Horace isn't the type to let things go." "What if he comes up here?" "He won't. Not personally. He'll send someone else to do his dirty work." Rowan tested the edge of the carving with his thumb. "But the trails are still blocked. Won't be clear for another few weeks. We've got time." Time for what? To decide what we're going to do when they come. The way he said when instead of if made her stomach tighten. "You think they will?" "I know they will." He set down the carving, another bird, half-formed. "Men like Horace don't accept defeat. And you marrying me instead of him? That's the worst kind of defeat. Public, humiliating. He'll want revenge." "So what do? We prepare." Over the next 2 weeks, Rowan transformed the cabin into something resembling a fortress. He reinforced the door with extra boards, cut firing slots in the shutters, moved ammunition and supplies into easy reach, showed Evelyn how to load and fire the rifle, making her practice until her shoulder was bruised from the recoil. "I don't want to shoot anyone," she said after missing the target for the 10th time. "You won't have to. Just knowing how might keep you alive." "That's not reassuring." "It's not meant to be. It's meant to be true." He made her practice anyway, and slowly, reluctantly, she got better. Started hitting the makeshift targets he'd set up. Started understanding the weight of the rifle, the kick, the way you had to breathe out slowly before squeezing the trigger. "Better," Rowan said after she hit 3 targets in a row. "You'll never be a sharpshooter, but you won't shoot your own foot off either." High praise. It's the truth. He smiled when he said it. A small smile. Barely there, but real. Evelyn smiled back. These moments were becoming more frequent. Small jokes, brief touches, the kind of casual intimacy that married couples probably took for granted, but that felt revolutionary to 2 people who'd started as desperate strangers. They still slept separately. Rowan by the fire, Evelyn in the bed. But sometimes she'd wake in the night and find him watching the flames, and she'd sit with him without speaking, just sharing the quiet. Other times she'd hear him in the shed, the scraping sounds that meant he was working on the cradle again. But now, when he came back inside, his face wasn't haunted, just tired. "You ever gonna finish it?" she asked one night. "Maybe. Someday." "What'll you do with it when you do?" Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know yet, but I think I'm starting to figure it out." He didn't elaborate, and Evelyn didn't push. The trails cleared in early May. Rowan rode down to check them, leaving Evelyn alone at the cabin for the first time since they'd married. She spent the day cleaning, cooking, trying not to think about what might happen if Horace's men were waiting at the bottom of the mountain. Rowan came back around sunset, riding hard. "They're coming," he said, dismounting. "I saw tracks, multiple horses, fresh. They're maybe a day behind me." Evelyn's heart lurched. "How many?" "At least 6. maybe more. What do we do? What we planned. Barricade ourselves inside. Make it costly for them to get to us. Hope they give up before... He stopped. Before what? Before someone gets killed. That night, they worked in grim silence. Moved furniture against the door. Stacked extra ammunition by the windows. Filled every container they had with water in case they ended up under siege. Evelyn's hands shook the entire time. You scared? Rowan asked. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He checked the rifle one more time. But don't let it freeze you. When the time comes, you move. You shoot if you have to. You stay alive, understand? Yeah. He touched her shoulder, brief, reassuring. I won't let them take you. I know. But as she lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, she couldn't stop thinking about the stories from Black Hollow, about the 3 wives who'd disappeared, about what Horace Calloway would do if he got his hands on her, about what Rowan would do to stop him. The riders arrived just after dawn. Evelyn woke to the sound of horses and voices outside. She scrambled out of bed and ran to the window. Through the shutters, she could see them, 8 men on horseback, armed with rifles and pistols, surrounding the cabin in a loose semicircle. Rowan was already at his position by the other window, rifle in hand. Stay low, he said without looking at her. Don't show yourself. What are they doing? Waiting for orders. As if on cue, one of the riders spurred his horse forward. He was older than the others, with a scarred face and the kind of weathered look that came from years of violence. Rowan Vance, he called out. My name's Silas Creed. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Horace Calloway. Rowan didn't answer. Mr. Calloway wants his property returned, Silas continued. You send out the girl, we ride away peaceful. Nobody needs to get hurt. She's not his property, Rowan called back. She's my wife. Legally married. You got no claim here. That marriage was a fraud. Done under duress. Mr. Calloway says it don't count. Mr. Calloway can go to hell, Silas sighed. I was hoping we could be civilized about this. You rode up my mountain with 8 armed men. That's not civilized. That's a threat. Fair point. Silas shifted in his saddle. How about this? You send out the girl, I pay you $500 for your trouble. Everyone walks away happy. How about you turn around and ride back to Black Hollow before I put a bullet through your skull? The men behind Silas tensed. Several raised their rifles. Silas held up a hand, stopping them. You're outnumbered, Vance. 8-1, and that's not counting the men I got positioned in the trees. 10-1 then. Still not good odds for you. You think you can take all of us before we burn you out? I think I can take enough of you that the rest won't get paid enough to finish the job. Evelyn could hear the truth in his voice. Rowan wasn't bluffing. He'd kill as many as he could, and damn the consequences. Silas must have heard it too because his expression hardened. Last chance, Vance. Send her out. No. Then we do this the hard way. Silas wheeled his horse around and rode back to his men. They clustered together, talking in low voices. What are they planning? Evelyn whispered. Probably deciding who gets to die first. That's not funny. Wasn't trying to be. The men spread out, taking positions around the cabin. 2 moved toward the barn. 3 disappeared into the trees. The rest stayed mounted, rifles ready. They're going to surround us, Rowan said. Try to starve us out or burn us out, maybe both. How long can we hold? Long as our ammunition lasts. Maybe a day. 2 if we're lucky. And then? Rowan finally looked at her. His face was hard, but his eyes were gentle. Then you take the back window and run. There's a trail behind the cabin that leads down the north side. They won't be watching it. You follow it down to... I'm not leaving you. Evelyn, I'm not. She grabbed the rifle she'd been practicing with. You married me to keep me away from Horace. I'm not going to let you die for that choice. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. Those men are here because of me, because I asked you to marry me, because I dragged you into this mess. Her hands tightened on the rifle. I'm staying. Rowan stared at her. Then, despite everything, he smiled. You're stubborn. So are you. Fair enough. He turned back to the window. Stay on that side. Cover the east approach. Don't waste ammunition on warning shots. If you shoot, shoot to kill. Evelyn's stomach turned, but she nodded. The first shot came 10 minutes later. It punched through the shutter near Evelyn's head, spraying splinters. She ducked instinctively, heart hammering. You hit, Rowan called. No. Good. Return fire. She raised the rifle with shaking hands, sighted through the gap in the shutters, and pulled the trigger. The recoil slammed into her shoulder. The shot went wide, hitting a tree 20 feet from the nearest rider. Breathe, Rowan said calmly, like we practiced. Another shot hit the cabin, then another. The men were testing their defenses, seeing how they'd respond. Rowan fired back. One of the riders screamed and fell from his horse, clutching his leg. That's one, Rowan said. The shooting intensified. Bullets ripped through the shutters, punched holes in the walls, kicked up splinters from the floor. The noise was deafening. Evelyn loaded and fired, not even sure if she was hitting anything. Through the chaos, she heard Silas shouting orders, heard horses moving, smelled smoke. They're burning the barn, Rowan said, trying to flush us out. The horses, already loose, I let them go this morning. Smart. But it meant they were trapped here, no escape except on foot. The siege lasted through the morning, wave after wave of gunfire, brief pauses while both sides reloaded. Then more shooting. Evelyn lost track of time. Her ears rang. Her shoulder ached. Her hands were black with powder residue. But she kept firing. Around noon, something changed. The shooting slowed, stopped. Evelyn peered through the shutters and saw the men pulling back, regrouping near the tree line. What are they doing? She asked. Rowan's face was grim. Changing tactics. 5 minutes later, she understood. One of the men rode forward carrying a torch. He got close enough to throw it, then wheeled away as Rowan's shot missed him by inches. The torch landed on the cabin roof. Shit, Rowan breathed. Within minutes, smoke began filtering through the ceiling, then flames. The dry wood caught fast, spreading across the roof like water. We need to get out, Evelyn said. Not yet. They're waiting for that. We'll burn alive. Then we make them pay for it. Rowan fired through the window, dropping another rider. The man's horse bolted, dragging him through the mud. The heat from the fire above became unbearable. Smoke filled the cabin, making it hard to breathe. Evelyn pulled her shirt over her mouth and kept shooting. Another torch hit the cabin, then another. The entire structure was burning now, flames eating through the roof, reaching down toward them. Now, Rowan said. Back window, go! Evelyn ran to the back of the cabin. Rowan smashed out the shutter with the rifle butt and boosted her through. She hit the ground hard, rolled, came up with the rifle ready. Rowan came through after her, moving fast despite his bad leg. Gunfire erupted behind them, men shouting, horses screaming. Run! Rowan yelled. They ran. The forest was thick here, full of deadfall and underbrush. Evelyn crashed through it, branches tearing at her clothes, lungs burning. Behind them, she could hear pursuit. Men crashing through the trees, voices getting closer. Rowan grabbed her arm and pulled her down behind a fallen log. Stay quiet, he whispered. They pressed themselves into the dirt, not breathing. Footsteps came closer. 2 men, moving through the forest with rifles raised. I saw them come this way, one said. Spread out. They can't have gone far. The men separated. One passed within 10 feet of their hiding spot, so close Evelyn could hear his breathing. Then he was past. Rowan waited until the footsteps faded. Then he stood, bringing the rifle up in one smooth motion. He fired twice. Both men fell. Come on, Rowan said, already moving. They ran deeper into the forest, putting distance between themselves and the burning cabin. Evelyn's legs screamed. Her lungs felt like they were on fire, but she kept moving. Finally, Rowan stopped in a small clearing. We rest here, he said. 2 minutes. Evelyn collapsed against a tree, gasping. How many are left? 4, maybe 5. Can we lose them? In these mountains? Yeah, I know every trail, every hiding spot. They don't. He checked his ammunition. But Silas won't give up easy. He's being paid too much. By Horace. Yeah. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. This is all his fault. Everything. The cabin burning. Those men dying. All of it. Not just his fault, Rowan said quietly. Mine too. What? I should have seen this coming. Should have been better prepared. Should have... He stopped, jaw tight. Should have protected you better. You did protect me. You're still protecting me. Not well enough. Before Evelyn could argue, they heard voices in the distance. The remaining men were still searching. "Time to move," Rowan said. They disappeared into the trees. The chase lasted through the afternoon. Rowan led them on a winding path through the mountains, doubling back, crossing streams to hide their tracks, using every trick he knew to throw off pursuit. But Silas was good. He kept coming, relentless as winter. By evening, they'd reached a rocky outcrop overlooking a ravine. No way forward except to climb down or go around, both options that would leave them exposed. "We make a stand here," Rowan said. "High ground, limited approaches. Force them to come at us from below." "What if they wait us out?" "Then we freeze overnight, but I don't think Silas has the patience for that." He was right. As the sun touched the horizon, the remaining men appeared below, 4 of them, including Silas. They spread out at the base of the outcrop, rifles ready. "Vance," Silas called up, "you can't run forever." "Don't need to run forever, just need to outlast you. I got all the time in the world." "You got until your employer stops paying you, which is what, 3 days? 4? How much is Horace giving you for this anyway?" Silas's silence was telling. "Let me guess," Rowan continued. $1,000? Maybe 1,500? Split 4 ways, that's what. 400 each? And you've already lost 4 men. That mean their families get their share? Or does it get divided among the survivors?" "Shut up, Vance. Because if it gets divided, you just made an extra $100 per corpse. Must be tempting to shoot your own men in the back when nobody's looking." One of the other men shifted nervously. "He's trying to divide us," Silas snapped. "Don't listen to him." "I'm just pointing out the economics," Rowan said. "Dangerous work, low pay, high mortality rate. And for what? So some banker can get his pride back? For what we're being paid, we'll drag that girl down to Black Hollow in pieces if we have to." "You're welcome to try." Silas raised his rifle. The shot went wide, ricocheting off rock near Rowan's head. He ducked back, returning fire. The bullet caught one of Silas's men in the shoulder, spinning him around. The fight devolved into chaos. Both sides firing, bullets sparking off stone, the sound echoing through the ravine. Evelyn aimed carefully, squeezed the trigger. One of the men below grabbed his leg and went down screaming. "Good shot," Rowan said. "I wasn't aiming for his leg." "Doesn't matter, he's out of the fight." They traded fire until the light failed completely. In the darkness, the muzzle flashes were blinding. Evelyn couldn't tell if she was hitting anything or just wasting ammunition. Then she heard Silas shouting, "Fall back! Regroup at the tree line!" The men retreated. Silence fell. Evelyn and Rowan waited in the darkness, barely breathing. "You think they're gone?" she whispered. "No, they're planning something." "Like what?" "Nothing good." They waited. Minutes stretched into an hour. The temperature dropped. Evelyn started shivering. Then she smelled it. Smoke. "They're burning us out again," she said. "No, they're burning the forest." Below them, flames spread through the dry underbrush. The men had set fires in multiple places, creating a wall of heat and smoke that would either drive Rowan and Evelyn out or suffocate them where they stood. "We need to move," Rowan said. "Now." They scrambled down the far side of the outcrop, away from the flames. The smoke was thick, choking. Evelyn could barely see 3 feet ahead. She stumbled, fell. Rowan hauled her back up. "Keep moving!" They ran blindly through smoke and darkness, the fire roaring behind them. Heat scorched Evelyn's back. Embers fell like snow. Then the ground disappeared beneath her feet. She fell, tumbling down a slope, rocks and dirt cascading around her. Hit the bottom hard enough to knock the wind out of her lungs. Rowan crashed down beside her a second later. "You hurt?" he gasped. "I don't know." "Can you move?" She tried. Everything hurt, but nothing felt broken. "Yeah." "Then up. We're not clear yet." They were at the bottom of the ravine now, a narrow space between rock walls. The fire burned above them, but here the air was clearer. Evelyn looked up and saw figures silhouetted against the flames. Silas and his remaining men standing at the top of the ravine. "End of the line, Vance," Silas called down. "You're trapped." Rowan raised his rifle, pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. He tossed it aside and reached for his pistol. "Don't," Silas said. "I got 3 rifles on you. You draw, you die. Along with your pretty wife." Rowan's hand stopped halfway to his gun. "Smart man." Silas started climbing down. Here's how this works. You surrender. We take the girl. You get to live. Simple. Like hell. Your choice. But if you fight, I'll make sure she suffers before we bring her back. And I'll make you watch. Rowan's face went completely still, the kind of stillness that came before violence. Don't, Evelyn whispered. Please, just let them. No. Rowan, I said no. He looked at Silas. You want her, you go through me. Silas sighed. You really are stupid, aren't you? He raised his rifle. Everything happened at once. Rowan drew his pistol and fired. The shot caught Silas in the chest, but the man's rifle was already discharging. The bullet hit Rowan and spun him around. He fell hard, blood spreading across his shirt. Evelyn screamed. The remaining men opened fire. Bullets sparked off the rocks around her. She grabbed Rowan's fallen pistol and fired back wildly, not aiming, just pulling the trigger until the gun clicked empty. Above, someone yelled. The shooting stopped. Evelyn looked up through tears and smoke and saw new figures at the top of the ravine. Men on horseback, at least a dozen of them. And leading them was Martha Yates from Black Hollow, holding a rifle like she knew how to use it. Anyone else want to get shot? Martha called out. Because we got plenty of ammunition and you boys are real good targets. The bounty hunters threw down their weapons. Evelyn, Martha shouted. You alive down there? Yes, but Rowan's hurt bad. We're coming down. Hold on. The next few minutes were chaos. Martha's people, townspeople from Black Hollow, men and women who'd apparently had enough of Horace's shit, climbed down into the ravine. They tied up Silas and his surviving men. They helped Evelyn move Rowan to a clearer spot. Martha knelt beside him, examining the wound. Bullet's still in there, needs a doctor. How bad? Evelyn asked. Bad enough? But he's tough. He'll make it if we get him down the mountain quick. Sheriff Wade, a tired-looking man in his 50s, appeared beside them. We got a wagon at the base trail. Can you move him? We'll manage, Martha said. She looked at Evelyn. You did good, honey. Real good. How did you know to come? Dennis, your uncle. He came to me after you disappeared. Said Horace had hired Silas Creed to hunt you down. We gathered everyone who was sick of Horace's bullying and rode up together. Dennis knew? He knew, and he felt guilty enough to do something about it. Martha squeezed her shoulder. Come on, let's get your husband home. They carried Rowan down the mountain on a makeshift stretcher. It took hours. By the time they reached the wagon, he'd lost consciousness from blood loss and pain. The doctor from Black Hollow met them at Martha's boarding house. He dug the bullet out while Evelyn held Rowan's hand and tried not to pass out herself. He'll live, the doctor said finally. But he needs rest. Weeks of it. He can stay here, Martha said. Both of you can. That night, while Rowan slept in a proper bed for the first time in years, Sheriff Wade came to see Evelyn. We arrested Horace, he said without preamble. Him and 3 of his associates. Evelyn looked up from where she sat beside Rowan's bed. For what? Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. We also found evidence he'd been manipulating land contracts for years, including the one that trapped your husband on that mountain the winter his wife died. The room went cold. What? Horace sabotaged Rowan's logging contract, made it so he couldn't work through the winter, couldn't afford to bring his wife down before the storms hit. Then when she went into labor, Horace delayed the doctor, made sure he didn't arrive until it was too late. Evelyn felt sick. Why would he do that? Because Rowan owned good land Horace wanted. He figured if he could drive Rowan to bankruptcy or suicide, he could buy it cheap. Wade's expression was disgusted. He's been doing it for years, destroying people who got in his way. We just never had proof until now. How did you get proof? One of Silas's men talked, said Horace had been planning to kill you too, eventually. Make it look like Rowan did it, then execute Rowan and take everything. Wade shook his head. Man's a monster. Evelyn looked down at Rowan's sleeping face, at the scars, the weathered skin, the lines of pain that had been there so long they'd become permanent, all of it because Horace Calloway wanted land. What happens now? She asked. Trial. Probably a hanging if he's convicted, which he will be. Wade stood. You and Rowan are free. Both of you. No more looking over your shoulders. He left. Evelyn sat in the darkness, holding Rowan's hand, thinking about cradles and lost children and 5 years of grief that should never have happened. When Rowan finally woke 2 days later, she told him everything. He listened in silence. When she finished, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "It wasn't my fault." "No, it wasn't. All this time, I thought I'd killed her. By being stupid, by not seeing the storm coming, by not being prepared." His voice cracked. "But it was him. It was Horace." "Yeah." Rowan closed his eyes. Tears leaked from the corners. "I want to see him," he said finally. "Before they hang him, I want him to know I survived, that he failed." "Are you sure?" "I need to. For Sarah. For the baby. For..." He looked at Evelyn. "For us." She squeezed his hand. "Okay, when you're strong enough." "I'm strong enough now." He wasn't really, but she helped him up anyway. Helped him get dressed. Walked with him through Black Hollow streets to the jail where Horace sat in a cell, waiting for trial. The man who'd once been the most powerful person in the territory now looked small, diminished, scared. He looked up when Rowan appeared. "You," Horace whispered. "Yeah, me." Rowan leaned against the cell bars. "You tried to destroy me. You killed my wife. You would have killed Evelyn too. All for what? Land? Money? You don't understand business." "I understand you're a murderer, and now everyone else does too." Rowan's voice was quiet, final. "You lost. I survived. And your empire's burning down around you while you sit in this cell waiting to die." Horace's face twisted with rage and fear. "You think you've won? You're still just a savage living on a mountain. Still just..." "A man who found someone worth fighting for," Rowan interrupted, "which is more than you'll ever have." He turned and walked away, Evelyn beside him. Behind them, Horace started screaming, but his words faded into nothing as they stepped out into the sunlight. "You okay?" Evelyn asked. Rowan took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." They walked back to Martha's boarding house together, leaving the past bleeding out in a jail cell and the future waiting like spring on a mountain ridge. They stayed in Black Hollow for 3 weeks while Rowan healed. The boarding house became their temporary home, a small room on the second floor with a window overlooking Main Street. It was strange being back in town after months on the mountain, strange hearing voices through the walls, footsteps on the stairs, the constant noise of people living their lives just beyond the door. Evelyn had forgotten how loud civilization could be. Rowan hated it. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened whenever someone knocked, and how his eyes tracked every person who passed their window, in the restless energy that built up until he'd pace the room like a caged animal. "We can go home soon," she'd tell him. "Home's gone," he'd remind her. "Burned to the ground, remember? Then we'll rebuild it." With what money? It was a fair question. They had nothing except the clothes on their backs and whatever supplies Rowan had cached in the forest. The cabin was ash. The barn was destroyed. Even the shed with the cradle. Evelyn stopped that thought before it could finish. "We'll figure it out," she said instead. But Rowan would just turn back to the window, watching the street below with eyes that saw threats in every shadow. The trial happened on a Tuesday. The entire town packed into the church since there was no proper courthouse. Horace sat at a makeshift defendant's table, flanked by 2 deputies. He'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His silver hair had gone white, his neat suit hung loose on a frame that had shrunk from stress and jail food. He didn't look at Rowan or Evelyn when they entered. The trial lasted 6 hours. Witness after witness took the stand. People Horace had cheated, threatened, destroyed over the years. The logger whose contract had been sabotaged. The widow whose husband had died in a suspicious accident after refusing to sell his land. The shopkeeper who'd been run out of business when Horace bought up all his suppliers. And Dennis, Evelyn's uncle, looking 10 years older himself, voice shaking as he described how Horace had threatened to kill him unless he sold Evelyn into marriage. "I'm sorry," Dennis said, looking directly at Evelyn. "I'm so damn sorry. I was weak. I was scared, and I let him—" "It's enough, Mr. Mercer," the judge said quietly. "You can step down." The evidence was overwhelming. Documents showing forged contracts, testimonies about bribes and threats. Silas Creed himself, facing a noose for murder, gave detailed accounts of everything Horace had hired him to do over the years. The jury deliberated for 20 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to hang. Horace finally looked up then, his face gray. His eyes found Evelyn in the crowd. For a moment she saw something that might have been regret, or maybe just fear of what came next. Then the deputies led him away and the moment passed. Outside the church, people gathered in small groups, talking in hushed voices. Martha found Evelyn and Rowan on the steps. "Justice," she said simply. "Yeah," Rowan replied, but his voice was hollow. "You should feel good about this. He can't hurt anyone anymore." "I know. But you don't feel good." Rowan looked at her. "I feel tired. That good enough?" Martha patted his arm. "More than fair. Come on back to the boarding house. I made stew." They followed her through the streets. People nodded to them as they passed. Some even smiled. Word had spread about how Rowan and Evelyn had fought off Horace's men, about how the savage from the mountain had turned out to be less monster and more victim. Public opinion was a strange thing, fickle as weather. "They like you now," Evelyn said quietly. "For now, until they need someone to blame again. You're not going to forgive them, are you?" "Would you?" She thought about it. About 8 years of watching this town slowly die while Horace squeezed every drop of life from it. About how no one had helped when she'd needed it. About how they'd all believed the worst about Rowan without question. "No," she admitted. "Probably not. Then we understand each other." That night, lying in the narrow boarding house bed, Evelyn asked the question that had been building for days. "What do we do now?" Rowan was quiet for a long time. They'd started sharing the bed after the second week, not out of desire, but simple practicality. The room was small, the floor was hard, and Rowan's injured body needed a proper mattress to heal. At first they'd kept carefully to their own sides, not touching, barely acknowledging the intimacy of shared space. But slowly, that had changed. A hand resting on a shoulder, bodies shifting closer during the night. Small moments of contact that neither of them mentioned, but both of them noticed. "I don't know," Rowan said finally. "I keep thinking about the mountain, about rebuilding, but every time I try to plan it, He stopped. "What?" "I remember Sarah, building that cabin with her. How excited she was. How she'd talk about the baby, about raising a family up there away from all the bullshit down here." His voice cracked. "And now she's gone, and the cabin's gone, and I don't know if I can go back there and build it all again without seeing ghosts everywhere I look." Evelyn rolled to face him. In the darkness, she could just make out his profile. "Then we don't rebuild," she said. "What?" "We build something new. Different location. Different design. Something that's ours, not yours and Sarah's. A fresh start." "I can't just abandon." "You're not abandoning anything. Sarah's grave is up there. The shed with the cradle. Those stay. But the cabin?" She touched his face. "That was already gone. You said it yourself. So we build somewhere else. Make something that's about the future instead of the past." Rowan caught her hand, held it against his cheek. "You really want to go back up there? After everything? It's home. Our home. And I'll be damned if I let Horace Calloway take that from us too." He kissed her palm, brief, gentle, the first real intimacy they'd shared beyond necessity. "Okay," he whispered. "We'll rebuild." They left Black Hollow a week later. Martha gave them supplies: flour, salt, coffee, ammunition. The town council, in a rare moment of conscience, voted to compensate Rowan for the destroyed cabin. Not much, $200. But it was something. "It's guilt money," Rowan said, staring at the bills. "So?" Evelyn stuffed them in her pack. "We'll use it anyway." Dennis met them at the edge of town. He looked sober for the first time in years, eyes clear but haunted. "Evelyn," he started, "I don't know what to say except—" "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't apologize again. Don't make promises you won't keep. Just try to be better. That's all I want." "I will. I swear I will." He looked at Rowan. "Take care of her." "That's the plan." "And Rowan? Thank you for saving her when I couldn't." Rowan just nodded. What was there to say to that? They rode north with 2 new horses, gifts from Martha, who'd refused payment, and enough supplies to last through summer. The trails were clear now, easy to navigate in the warm May sunshine. When they reached the clearing where the cabin had stood, Evelyn had to stop and stare. The barn was partially collapsed but salvageable. The cabin itself was nothing but a charred foundation and scattered debris. Ash and burned timber mixed with the first green shoots of spring growth pushing through the destruction. But the shed still stood, untouched by the fire. Locked door still secure. Rowan dismounted and walked to it slowly, pulled out the key. His hand shook as he unlocked it. Inside, the cradle sat exactly as they'd left it, perfect and untouched and heartbreaking in its beauty. It survived, Evelyn said softly. Yeah. Rowan ran his fingers over the carved roses. Sarah always said cedar doesn't burn easy. Guess she was right. What do you want to do with it? He looked at her. I want to finish it. Properly finish it this time. No more finding mistakes that don't exist. No more endless carving. Just complete it. And then we put it somewhere safe and let it be what it was supposed to be. What was it supposed to be? Rowan smiled sadly. Hope. They spent that first day clearing the cabin site, salvaging anything useful from the wreckage. Evelyn found the iron ring Rowan had given her at their wedding. The band had survived the fire, bent and blackened but intact. She cleaned it, straightened it as best she could, and slid it back on her finger. Rowan watched her do it. You don't have to wear that. I know. It's not even a real wedding ring. It's real enough. That night they made camp in the shed, the only structure with a roof. They built a small fire just outside and cooked beans and coffee while the sun set over the mountains. Remember when you first brought me up here? Evelyn asked. I was terrified. Of me? Of everything. The silence, the isolation, you. She smiled. Seems stupid now. Not stupid. I was pretty terrifying. You still are sometimes. But not to you. Not to me, she agreed. Rowan poked at the fire with a stick. I never thought I'd have this again. Have what? Someone to sit with. Someone who doesn't flinch when I walk in a room. Someone who... He stopped, searching for words. Someone who stays. Evelyn moved closer, resting her head on his shoulder. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. He kissed the top of her head. And for the first time since the siege, Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest, some tight knot of fear and stress that finally allowed itself to unravel. They were home, damaged and burned and barely standing, but home nonetheless. Rebuilding took all summer. They started with the barn, since the horses needed shelter, worked from dawn until the light failed, hauling timber from the forest, sawing and hammering and fitting pieces together with hands that blistered and bled and eventually calloused. It was brutal work, the kind that left them too exhausted to do anything but eat and collapse into sleep each night. But slowly, the barn took shape. 4 walls, a roof, stalls for the horses and space for hay storage. It's not pretty, Rowan said, examining their handiwork. It's standing. That's pretty enough. With the barn finished, they moved to the cabin. This time they built it bigger, 2 rooms instead of 1, a bedroom and a main space that served as kitchen and living area. Rowan insisted on a proper stone fireplace, spending 2 weeks hauling rocks from the creek and fitting them together with mud mortar. This is going to take forever, Evelyn complained on day 10, and it'll last twice as long as the old one. The old one burned down because it had a wooden chimney. This one won't burn. She couldn't argue with that logic. By late July, the cabin had walls and a roof. No windows yet. Glass was expensive and they were saving money for winter supplies. But it was enclosed. Private. Theirs. The first night they slept inside, Evelyn lay on the floor. No bed yet, just blankets over pine boughs. And listened to the wind in the eaves. Sounds different, she said. New wood. Needs time to settle. Think it'll feel like home eventually? Does it not already? She considered that. The cabin was rougher than the old one. The floor wasn't level, the door stuck. The chimney drew smoke weird when the wind came from the north. But it was theirs, built by their hands, marked by their effort. Yeah, she said. I guess it does. Rowan reached for her hand in the darkness. Good. August brought unexpected visitors. Evelyn was working in the garden they'd planted, Mostly potatoes and beans, things that would store through winter, when she heard horses on the trail. She grabbed the rifle they kept nearby and waited. 3 riders appeared in the clearing. For a moment, her heart stopped, thinking it was more of Horace's men somehow escaped from jail. Then she recognized Martha on the lead horse. "Put that down before you shoot someone," Martha called out. Evelyn lowered the rifle. "What are you doing up here?" "Bringing supplies. And news." Martha dismounted, followed by 2 men Evelyn recognized from town. "Where's Rowan?" "Cutting timber. Why?" "Because I need to talk to both of you." Evelyn called for Rowan. He appeared 10 minutes later, axe in hand, suspicious until he saw who it was. "Martha." "Rowan, looking good. Leg healing all right?" "Well enough." "Good." She gestured to the loaded pack horses. "Brought you some things. Window glass, nails, flour, salt pork, early wedding presents, you could say." "We've been married for 6 months," Evelyn said. "So I'm late. Sue me." Rowan's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" "Direct as always." Martha pulled a letter from her coat. "This came to the boarding house. Addressed to you, from the Territorial Land Office." Rowan took it warily, opened it, read in silence. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "What is it?" Evelyn asked. "Horace's land holdings are being liquidated, sold off to pay his debts and compensate his victims." He looked up. "They're offering me first purchase on my original claim, the land Sarah and I bought, 5 acres for $50. "That's a quarter of what you paid originally," Martha said. "If you're interested." "I'm interested." "Good, because there's more." She pulled out another paper. "The town council voted. They want to hire you as the new timber manager, oversee logging operations, manage contracts, make sure nobody else gets screwed the way Horace screwed you." Rowan stared at her. "Why?" "Because you know the work, because people trust you now. Because we need someone who won't sell us out to the highest bidder." She paused. "And because it pays $60 a month." The number hung in the air. $60 a month was real money. The kind of money that meant security, food through the winter, glass for the windows, maybe even a real bed. "I'd have to come down to Black Hollow," Rowan said slowly, "once a week, maybe twice during busy season. I don't do well in town. So stay one night and come back up. Nobody's asking you to move there." Martha's expression softened. "Look, I know you got no reason to trust those people, but things are changing. Horace is dead. Hanged 2 weeks ago, by the way. His cronies are gone or running scared. The town's trying to rebuild into something that's not built on fear and debt." "People don't change," Rowan said. "Maybe not. But situations do. And right now, Black Hollow needs someone who gives a damn about more than profit." She held out the contract. "Just think about it." Rowan took the paper, but didn't look at it. After Martha and her companions left, he and Evelyn sat outside the half-finished cabin, watching the sun set. "You should take it," Evelyn said. "I don't want to work for them." "You wouldn't be working for them. You'd be working for yourself, making sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else." "That's not my responsibility." "Maybe not, but you'd be good at it." She leaned against him. "And $60 a month means we could finish this cabin before winter, maybe even add on a room." "What would we do with an extra room?" The question hung there, unspoken implications filling the space between them. They'd been married 6 months, lived together in close quarters through winter storms and sieges and rebuilding. They shared a bed now, though they'd never taken it further than falling asleep in each other's arms. But Evelyn had started thinking about the future, about what it might look like with children running through these mountains, about the cradle sitting finished and waiting in the shed. "I don't know," she said carefully, "but it's nice to have options." Rowan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'll take the job, on one condition." "What?" "We finish the cabin first. I'm not leaving you up here alone in a half-built house. I can take care of myself." "I know, but I'd worry anyway." She kissed his cheek. "Deal." They finished the cabin in 3 weeks of brutal, focused work. Installed the windows, built a proper door with hinges instead of leather straps, constructed a bed frame and filled a mattress with pine needles and dried grass, added shelves and a table and 2 chairs. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. It was warm. It was home. The night they moved their things from the shed to the cabin, Rowan stood in the doorway looking at what they'd built. Not bad, he said. High praise from you. I mean it. This is good work. We make a good team. He turned to look at her. Yeah, we do. That night, they made love for the first time. Not frantically, not desperately, just two people who'd survived hell together, finally allowing themselves to be gentle with each other. Afterward, lying tangled in blankets on their new bed, Evelyn traced the scars on Rowan's chest. You ever think about how we got here? She asked. All the time. Any regrets? About marrying you? He kissed her forehead. Not even one. Even though I brought Horace's wrath down on you, even though your cabin burned and you almost died, even though all that, he pulled her closer, because you stayed. Through all of it, you stayed. Sarah, his voice caught. Sarah didn't get a choice, but you did, and you chose me anyway. You're not a hard choice, Rowan. I used to be, to everyone else. Then everyone else is an idiot. He laughed, actually laughed. The sound was rusty, but real. I love you, he said. Simple, direct. The first time either of them had spoken the words out loud. I love you too, Evelyn replied. And in the darkness of their new cabin, with the mountain wind singing through the pines outside, they held each other and let the past finally begin to fade. Rowan's first trip to Black Hollow as timber manager happened on a cold September morning. He left before dawn, riding down the mountain with the contract papers in his saddlebag and tension in every line of his body. Evelyn watched him go, resisting the urge to call him back. He returned that evening exhausted but intact. How was it? She asked. Weird. People kept thanking me, shaking my hand, acting like I'm some kind of hero. You are a hero. I'm just a man doing a job. Same thing sometimes. Over the following months, the pattern established itself. Rowan would ride down once a week, sometimes twice. He'd meet with logging crews, inspect operations, negotiate contracts. Then he'd ride back up the mountain to Evelyn and the cabin, and the quiet that soothed him better than any medicine. The work changed him, not dramatically, but noticeably. He stood straighter, talked more. The haunted look that had lived in his eyes since Sarah's death began to fade, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. And Black Hollow changed too, slowly, painfully. But it changed. New families moved in to fill houses Horace had kept empty. Businesses reopened. The saloon became less of a depressing hole and more of a gathering place. The town wasn't thriving, but it was breathing again. They want to rename Main Street, Rowan told Evelyn one night in October. After me. Are you serious? Unfortunately, I told them absolutely not. Why? Because I don't need a street named after me. I just need them to stop being idiots about timber contracts. Evelyn laughed. You're going to be terrible at accepting gratitude, aren't you? Probably. Good. Keeps you humble. Winter came again, but this time it felt different. The cabin was warm. Their stores were full. And when the first big storm hit in November, Evelyn and Rowan sat by the fire drinking coffee and listening to the wind without any fear of what it might bring. This is nice, Evelyn said. What is? This. Us. Being snowed in without worrying we're going to starve or freeze or get attacked. Standards have gotten low. Or maybe they've gotten realistic. Rowan set down his coffee and pulled her close. You happy? Yeah, are you? He thought about it, really thought about it, considered the question from every angle. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. 2 weeks before Christmas, Evelyn woke up nauseous. At first, she thought it was something she'd eaten, bad meat maybe, or the beans had gone off. But when it happened 3 days in a row, always in the morning, always passing by noon, she started to suspect something else. She didn't tell Rowan. Not yet. Not until she was sure. But she couldn't stop thinking about the shed, about the cradle sitting there, finished now but unused, about what it might mean to finally fill it with something besides grief. On the fourth morning, Rowan found her outside being sick into the bushes. You all right? He asked, concerned. Fine, just queasy. Should I ride down, get the doctor? No, I don't think a doctor can help with this. He stared at her, understanding dawned slowly across his face. Are you? I think so. It's too early to know for sure, but the signs are there. Rowan sat down hard on the steps, just sat there, staring at nothing. Rowan? I'm okay, just... He swallowed hard, just processing. Are you happy about it? I don't know. Terrified, maybe. Hopeful. Both. He looked up at her. Are you? Same. All of it. He stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully like she might break. We'll be okay, he whispered. Whatever happens, we'll be okay. Promise? Promise. That night, they walked out to the shed together. Rowan unlocked it, and they stood looking at the cradle in the lamplight. It's really finished, Evelyn said. Yeah, it took me 5 years, but yeah, it's beautiful. It was supposed to be for... He stopped, corrected himself. It was supposed to be for one child, but maybe it can be for another. You sure? Sarah would want it used. She'd want something good to come from all this. He touched the carved roses gently, and I think I'm finally ready to let it be what it was meant to be. They carried the cradle to the cabin together, placed it in the corner of the bedroom where morning light would touch it. It looked right there, like it had always belonged. We should paint the room, Evelyn said. Make it cheerful. We don't have paint. Then we'll get some. Next time you go to town. Yellow? Rowan said suddenly. What? The room. Paint it yellow, like sunshine. His voice was thick with emotion. Sarah wanted yellow for the nursery, said babies should wake up to light, not darkness. Evelyn took his hand. Yellow it is. Spring came early that year, as if the mountain itself was celebrating new life. By March, the snow had mostly melted. Wildflowers pushed through the dead grass around the cabin. Birds returned in flocks, filling the forest with song. And Evelyn's belly began to swell with undeniable proof of what they'd both known since December. Rowan became almost obsessively protective. He wouldn't let her lift anything heavy, made her rest constantly. Rode to Black Hollow twice a week now, just to check with the doctor about what was normal and what wasn't. You're driving me crazy, Evelyn told him after he'd forbidden her from climbing the ladder to the loft. Good. Stay on the ground where it's safe. I'm pregnant, not dying. I know, but I'm not taking any chances. She understood. Of course she understood. He'd lost one wife and child to circumstances beyond his control. He wouldn't lose another if he could help it. So she let him fuss, let him build her a chair with extra cushions, let him cook meals even though he was terrible at it, let him love her the only way he knew how, through constant, vigilant protection. In April, Dennis visited. Evelyn heard the horse before she saw it, looked out and saw her uncle riding up the trail, looking nervous and uncertain. Rowan stepped outside with the rifle. Not threatening, just ready. Easy, Dennis called. Just here to talk. About what? About family and making amends. He dismounted slowly, hands visible. Can I come in? Rowan looked at Evelyn. She nodded. They sat at the table, 3 people with too much history and not enough words to bridge it. I've been sober, Dennis said. 3 months now. It's hard, real hard, but I'm trying. Good for you, Evelyn said carefully. I know I got no right to ask anything from you, not after what I did, but I heard... He swallowed. I heard about the baby, and I wanted you to know that if you need anything, I'm here. I know I failed you before, but I want to try to be better, to be the uncle I should have been all along. Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. Why now? Because I'm tired of being ashamed, tired of running from what I did, and because you're the only family I got left. He looked at Rowan. Both of you. Rowan's expression was unreadable. You hurt her. I know. You sold her to a monster to save yourself. I know that too. Why should we trust you now? You shouldn't. Not yet. But maybe over time I can earn it back. Dennis pulled out a small wooden box. I made this. For the baby. It's not much, but, he opened it. Inside was a set of carved wooden animals. A bear. An eagle. A deer. Rough, but clearly made with care. I've been learning woodworking, Dennis said. Keeps my hands busy. Keeps me sober. I thought maybe the baby might like them someday. Evelyn took the box. Ran her fingers over the carvings. They weren't perfect. Some of the edges were rough, the proportions a little off, but they were made with love. She could see that. "Thank you," she whispered. Dennis's face crumpled with relief. "I'm going to do better. I swear it. I'm going to be the kind of person Sarah would have been proud to know." "Sarah's dead," Rowan said flatly. "I know, but she was family too. Evelyn's parents knew her, loved her, and I think she'd want—" He stopped, started again. "I think she'd want this baby to have all the family it can get, even a broken old fool like me." Rowan and Evelyn exchanged glances, a whole conversation happening in silence. Finally, Evelyn said, "You can visit, sometimes, when you're sober. And if you ever show up drunk or cause trouble, you're not welcome back. Understand?" "I understand. Thank you." "Thank you both." After Dennis left, Rowan held Evelyn while she cried. "You think he'll stay sober?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably not." She wiped her eyes. "But he's trying. That has to count for something." "Does it?" "To me it does." Rowan kissed the top of her head. "Then it counts." The baby came in late September during the first cold snap of autumn. Evelyn had been feeling strange all day, restless, uncomfortable, like her body was preparing for something big. By evening, the contractions started. Rowan rode for the doctor immediately, pushing the horse hard down the mountain. He made it to Black Hollow in record time, dragged the doctor from his dinner, and raced back up. By the time they arrived, Martha had already shown up. She'd been visiting to bring supplies and had refused to leave when she'd seen what was happening. "About damn time," she said when Rowan burst through the door. "She's been asking for you." The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of Evelyn screaming and sweating and gripping Rowan's hand hard enough to leave bruises. 14 hours of him feeling completely helpless, watching her suffer, and being unable to do anything except be there. "I can't do this," Evelyn gasped between contractions. "I can't." "You can," Rowan said fiercely. "You're the strongest person I know. You survived Horace. You survived me. You can survive this. What if something goes wrong? It won't. But what if— Then we'll deal with it together, like we deal with everything." He kissed her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here." Dawn was breaking when the baby finally came. A boy, small and red and screaming his lungs out. The doctor cleaned him, checked him, and handed him to Evelyn with a smile. "Healthy," he said. "Lungs work fine, obviously." Evelyn held her son with shaking hands, staring down at his tiny face in wonder. He had Rowan's dark hair, her eyes, or what would become her eyes once they focused properly. He was perfect. "Rowan," she whispered. "Look at him." Rowan looked, and something in his expression broke open. All the walls he'd built, all the protection he'd wrapped around his heart. It all came crashing down in the face of this tiny, screaming miracle. "He's here," Rowan said, voice cracking. "He's really here. You want to hold him?" He held out his hands. They were shaking. "I don't know how." "Nobody does at first. You learn." She placed the baby in his arms. Rowan held him carefully, like he was made of glass. The baby stopped crying, just looked up at his father with unfocused eyes, making small sounds. And Rowan, the man who'd spent 5 years drowning in grief, who'd carved a cradle for a child that never came, who'd thought he'd never deserve a second chance, Rowan started to cry. "Thank you," he whispered to Evelyn. "Thank you for staying, for fighting, for giving me this." "We gave it to each other," she replied. Martha cleared her throat. "Y'all got a name for him?" Rowan and Evelyn looked at each other. They'd discussed names, gone through dozens of options, but none of them had felt right. "Matthew," Evelyn said suddenly. "After my father." "Matthew Vance," Rowan repeated, testing it. "Yeah, that works." The doctor and Martha left shortly after, heading back down the mountain with promises to check in next week. Dennis showed up the following day with more carved animals and tears in his eyes. But mostly, it was just the three of them, Rowan, Evelyn, and Matthew, learning each other, learning how to be a family. The cradle sat beside their bed, cedar wood gleaming in the firelight. And for the first time in 5 years, it held the child it had always been meant for. Not Sarah's child, not the baby who never came, but a new life, a new hope, a second chance that none of them had expected, but all of them had fought to earn. Outside, autumn painted the mountains gold and red. Inside, the fire burned warm and steady. And on Frostfang Ridge, where ghosts had once haunted every shadow, a family finally found peace. Matthew's first winter was the hardest thing Evelyn had ever survived, and she'd survived plenty. The baby didn't sleep. Or rather, he slept in 20-minute bursts scattered randomly through the day and night like some kind of torture designed by a sadistic universe. Evelyn walked the cabin floor at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, bouncing a screaming infant while exhaustion turned her brain to mud. "Let me take him," Rowan would say, appearing beside her like a ghost. "You need to sleep. You have work tomorrow." "So do you." "My work is here. Yours requires riding down a mountain." "Evelyn, just go back to bed." But he never did. He'd stand there watching her pace, ready to catch her if she stumbled, ready to take Matthew the moment her arms gave out. Which they did, frequently. Being a mother wasn't what Evelyn had expected. She'd thought it would be natural, instinctive, that some maternal switch would flip and she'd suddenly know what to do. But instead, she spent most days feeling like she was drowning, keeping Matthew alive through sheer, stubborn refusal to fail. The baby cried when he was hungry, cried when he was tired, cried when he was wet or uncomfortable or for no damn reason at all. Evelyn fed him, changed him, rocked him until her back screamed in protest. And still he cried. "Something's wrong with him," she said one night, near tears herself. "Normal babies don't cry this much." "He's fine," Rowan said, taking Matthew from her. "Doctor checked him twice. He's just loud." "That's an understatement." "He's got your lungs." "This isn't funny." "Little bit funny." She wanted to hit him. Instead, she collapsed on the bed and stared at the ceiling while Rowan walked the floor with their son. Matthew quieted almost immediately in his father's arms. "How do you do that?" Evelyn demanded. "Do what?" "Make him stop crying." "I don't do anything. Just hold him." "I hold him. Different kind of holding, maybe." Rowan's voice was gentle. "You hold him like you're afraid he'll break. I hold him like he's already strong. He's 3 months old. Doesn't matter. Babies know things." Evelyn rolled onto her side, watching Rowan pace with Matthew against his massive shoulder. The baby's eyes were already drooping, little fists unclenching. "I'm a terrible mother," she whispered. Rowan stopped. "Don't say that. It's true. I can't even get my own son to stop crying." "You're exhausted. You're doing everything right. You just need sleep." "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I'm convinced something bad will happen." "Like what?" "Like he'll stop breathing, or choke, or—" Her voice cracked. "Or I'll wake up and he'll be gone, and this whole thing will have been a dream." Rowan sat on the edge of the bed, still holding Matthew. "Look at me." She did. "This is real. He's real. You're a good mother. You're tired and scared and learning as you go, but that doesn't make you terrible. That makes you human. You make it look easy. Because I'm not carrying him for 9 months and then feeding him from my body every 3 hours. You're doing the hard part. I'm just backup. Important backup. Still backup." He shifted Matthew to one arm and took Evelyn's hand with the other. "We're in this together. When you're drowning, I'll pull you up. When I'm drowning, you do the same. That's how this works. What if we both drown? Then we'll drown together, but we won't, because we're stubborn and mean and we don't quit." He squeezed her hand. "Right?" "Right," she whispered. Matthew made a small snuffling sound and fell completely asleep. Rowan laid him carefully in the cradle and climbed into bed beside Evelyn, pulled her close. She buried her face in his chest and finally let herself cry, not from sadness, but from pure exhaustion and relief at not being alone in this impossible task. "I love you," she said into his shirt. "Love you too. Even when I'm falling apart?" "Especially then." She fell asleep like that, wrapped in his arms, while their son slept peacefully 3 feet away in a cradle, carved from grief and finished with hope. By spring, things got easier. Not easy, just easier. Matthew started sleeping for longer stretches. Evelyn learned to read his different cries, hungry versus tired versus just wanting attention. The fog of sleep deprivation began to lift enough that she could think clearly again. and Rowan took on more responsibility, both at home and in Black Hollow. The timber operation was expanding. More crews, more contracts, more money flowing through the town. He rode down 3 times a week now, sometimes staying overnight when negotiations ran long. Evelyn missed him when he was gone, but she'd also learned to be alone again, to find strength in the silence instead of fear. On a warm April morning, she bundled Matthew in blankets and walked to the shed. She hadn't been inside since they'd moved the cradle to the cabin. The space felt strange now, empty. Tools still lined the walls, wood shavings still covered the floor. But the heart of the place, the reason it existed, was gone. "Your father built something beautiful here," she told Matthew, who watched her with serious eyes. "Something that saved him when he thought he couldn't be saved. You should know that about him. He's strong, but he's also gentle, and he loves someone so much that losing her nearly destroyed him." Matthew grabbed her finger and tried to eat it. "You won't remember Sarah, but she's part of your story anyway. Part of all our stories." Evelyn looked around the shed. This place held his grief for 5 years. Maybe it's time it held something else. Over the next week, she cleaned out the shed completely, swept away the wood shavings, organized the tools, brought in a workbench and chair, hung shelves on the walls. When Rowan came home and saw what she'd done, he stopped in the doorway. "What's this?" "Your workshop, for woodworking, for making things that aren't about grief anymore." "Evelyn, you're good at it, and you like it, so why not have a proper space for it?" She gestured to the cleared area. "Make furniture, make toys for Matthew, make whatever you want. Just make it because you want to, not because you're trying to outrun ghosts." Rowan walked into the space slowly, running his hands over the clean workbench. "I don't know what to make." "Then figure it out. You've got time." He pulled her close. Matthew squished between them and kissed her hard. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. The real me. Not the monster everyone thought I was. Not the broken man I thought I was. Just me. That's the only you I've ever seen." He started spending evenings in the workshop after Matthew went to sleep. Evelyn would hear the familiar scraping sounds, but different now. Lighter. Less frantic. The sound of creation instead of penance. He made a rocking horse, a set of wooden blocks with letters carved into them, a small chair sized for a toddler. Things Matthew would grow into. Things that spoke of future instead of past. Dennis visited more frequently as spring turned to summer. He'd stay sober for weeks at a time, then disappear for a few days and come back looking ashamed. But he always came back, always tried again. "I'm not good at this," he told Evelyn one afternoon while holding Matthew. "The staying clean part. Nobody is. That's why it's hard. Your mother was so much stronger than me. She'd be ashamed of what I became." "Maybe, but she'd also want you to keep trying." "You think?" "I know." Evelyn watched him with her son. "You're good with him. He doesn't know any better yet. Wait till he's old enough to understand what a screw-up his uncle is." "Then don't be a screw-up. Be better." Dennis looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "How?" "One day at a time. One choice at a time. You can't change what you did to me. You can't take back the years you wasted. But you can be someone Matthew looks up to when he's older. You can be the uncle he deserves instead of the one you were to me." "That's a lot of pressure." "Good. Use it." Something shifted in Dennis's expression. Resolution, maybe, or just exhaustion with his own failure. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll try." That's all anyone can do. He stayed sober after that. 3 months, 6 months, a year. It wasn't perfect. He still attended meetings in Black Hollow twice a week, still struggled with demons Evelyn couldn't see. But he stayed sober, and slowly, grudgingly, Rowan began to accept him as part of their lives. "Never thought I'd see the day," Martha said during one of her visits, watching Dennis teach Matthew to stack wooden blocks. "People can change," Evelyn replied. "Some people. Most just get better at pretending." "Which one is Dennis?" Martha considered. "Jury's still out, but I got hope." Hope. It was a strange thing to have about Dennis after everything, but Evelyn had learned that hope wasn't about certainty. It was about possibility, and possibility was worth holding on to. Matthew's first birthday came in late September with the aspens turning gold on the mountainside. They celebrated at the cabin with Martha, Dennis, Sheriff Wade, and a handful of people from Black Hollow who'd become something like friends over the past year. Not many. Rowan still didn't trust easily, but enough to fill the cabin with voices and laughter. Matthew smashed his face into a cake Martha had made, getting frosting everywhere. He laughed, a sound like pure joy, and everyone laughed with him. Evelyn stood in the doorway watching, feeling something unclench in her chest. A year ago, she'd been terrified, exhausted, convinced she was failing at everything. Now she was just tired. But it was a different kind of tired, the earned kind, the kind that came from building something instead of surviving something. "You look happy," Rowan said, appearing beside her. "I am happy." "Good." He slipped an arm around her waist. "Me too." "Really?" "Really. I got my wife, my son, work that matters. People who don't run when they see me coming." He paused. "Hell, some of them even smile now. Progress. More than I ever thought I'd have." They watched Matthew destroy the cake with enthusiastic incompetence, assisted by Dennis, who was laughing harder than anyone. "Think we should have another?" Evelyn asked quietly. Rowan looked at her. "Another what?" "Baby. Eventually. Matthew shouldn't be alone up here." "You want another one? After how hard the first year was? I want him to have what I didn't, what you didn't. A sibling, family, someone who'll be there when we're gone." Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Okay. Just okay? What else is there to say? You want another kid, we'll have another kid, I trust you. Even though I'm terrifying at it?" "You're not terrifying, you're learning. There's a difference." He kissed her temple. "And you got me. We'll figure it out together like we figure everything else out. By stumbling through it and hoping we don't break anything important?" "Exactly." She laughed and leaned into him, watching their son discover the joy of smashing baked goods. 2 years later, they had a daughter. Clara came easier than Matthew had. Faster labor, less screaming, a baby who slept like the dead and only woke to eat. Evelyn kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Clara to reveal some hidden difficulty. But she was just easy, content, happy. "This feels wrong," Evelyn said, watching Clara sleep peacefully while Matthew destroyed the cabin around her. "What does?" "Having an easy baby, like we're being set up for something terrible. Or maybe we just got lucky this time." "You don't believe in luck." "I believe in you. That's better than luck." Matthew, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his new sister. He'd sit beside her cradle for hours, talking to her in nonsense words, bringing her his toys even though she couldn't hold them yet. "Gentle," Evelyn reminded him constantly. "She's little." "I know, Mama. I'm careful." And he was. Surprisingly so for a toddler whose main mode of operation was destructive chaos. Watching them together, Evelyn understood what she'd been trying to give them. Not perfection, not some idealized childhood, just each other. Someone to lean on when the world got hard, because the world would get hard. That was guaranteed. But having someone beside you made it survivable. The years accumulated like snowfall, quiet, steady, building into something substantial. Matthew learned to read from the books Martha brought up. Clara learned to walk by chasing her brother around the cabin. Rowan's workshop filled with creations, furniture, toys, decorative pieces that he'd started selling in Black Hollow. Dennis stayed sober, became the uncle both children adored, the one who told stories and carved animals, and never failed to show up when he said he would. The cabin grew too. Rowan added another room when Clara turned 2, then a proper porch when Matthew was 5. Small expansions, permanent improvements. The mountain homestead transformed from a survival shelter into an actual home. Black Hollow changed as well. New businesses opened. The population grew. The town that had been dying when Evelyn first arrived was now thriving in a small, steady way. Not rich, but stable, hopeful. And Rowan, the man they'd once called a monster, was part of that transformation. His timber management kept operations fair and sustainable. His presence in town reminded people what happened when greed went unchecked. He never forgot Horace. Never let anyone else forget either. "You're like the town's conscience," Evelyn teased him once. "I'm the guy who makes sure nobody else's wife dies because some bastard wanted their land." "Same thing." "No, One sounds noble, the other's just doing what should have been done all along. He never sought recognition, never wanted praise, just did the work and came home to his family. And Evelyn loved him for it, for his roughness and honesty, for the way he'd never learned to accept compliments but would spend hours teaching Matthew how to saw wood properly, for how he'd hold Clara while she slept, this massive scarred man cradling a tiny girl like she was made of light. "You're good at this," she told him one evening while they watched the kids play outside. "At what?" "Being a father, a husband, a person." "I'm adequate at best." "You're more than adequate. You're exactly what they need." "What about what you need?" She took his hand. "You're that too." On Matthew's 7th birthday, Rowan took him into the workshop. "You're old enough now," he said. "Old enough to learn something real." "Like what, Papa?" "Like how to make things that last." He taught Matthew to carve. Started with simple projects: a whistle, a small bowl, a letter opener. Showed him how to read the grain, how to let the wood tell you what it wanted to be. Matthew was terrible at first, impatient, sloppy, but he kept trying and slowly he got better. "Why do we do this?" he asked one afternoon, frustrated by a piece that refused to cooperate. "Because things you make yourself mean more than things you buy. Because creation is better than destruction. Because—" Rowan paused, searching for words. "Because your mother saved me by staying. And I need you to understand that building things, relationships, family, trust, that's what makes life worth living. The rest is just noise." Matthew looked at him with serious eyes. "Is that why you made Clara's cradle?" "How'd you know about that?" "Mama told me, said you made it for a baby who never came, and then I came instead." Rowan set down his tools. "That's right. Were you sad that the other baby didn't come?" "Very sad. For a long time." "But then you got me and Clara." "Yeah. So it worked out." The simplicity of it, the child's ability to see past complexity to essential truth, made Rowan's throat tight. "Yeah, buddy, it worked out." Matthew went back to carving, the moment already moving past for him. But Rowan sat there for a long time, watching his son work, thinking about how much had changed since that February day when a desperate woman had asked him to marry her in a church. He'd thought his life was over, thought the best he could hope for was to survive another winter, another year, an endless string of days marked only by the scraping of wood and the weight of grief. Instead, he'd gotten this: a family, a purpose, a second chance he'd never believed he deserved. When Clara turned 5, Evelyn started teaching her letters. The girl was sharp as a knife, picking up reading faster than Matthew had. She'd sit at the table sounding out words while Matthew worked on arithmetic. Both children bent over their lessons with matching expressions of concentration. "They're going to be smarter than both of us combined," Evelyn said. "Good. World needs smart people. You're smart. I'm practical. Different thing. You built a timber operation from nothing. You manage contracts and crews. You run half of Black Hollow's economy. That's not practical. That's brilliant." Rowan shrugged. "Just doing what needs doing. And raising it perfectly to prove my point." He smiled despite himself. "Argue with you is pointless. Took you long enough to figure that out." The years kept passing. Matthew turned 10. Clara turned 8. The cabin needed a new roof. The barn needed repairs. The endless cycle of maintenance and improvement that came with mountain living. But through it all, the family held. Not perfectly. They fought sometimes. Matthew went through a phase of sullen anger around 11. Clara developed a stubborn streak that made Evelyn want to tear her hair out. Rowan still struggled with darkness sometimes. Days where the ghosts came back and he'd disappear into his workshop for hours. But they held. Because that's what families did. They bent. They strained. They found ways to carry each other through the hard parts. One autumn evening, when Matthew was 12 and Clara was 10, they all sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains red and gold. "Tell us the story again," Clara said. "What story?" Evelyn asked, though she knew. "How you and Papa met." "You've heard it 100 times. I want to hear it again." Rowan and Evelyn exchanged glances. They'd sanitized the story for the kids, left out Horace's brutality, the siege, the fear, made it into something safer. A desperate proposal. A marriage of convenience that became love. "Your mother asked me to marry her," Rowan said, "right in the middle of church." In front of everyone? Matthew asked. In front of the minister, at least. Why'd you say yes? Because she looked at me like I was worth saving, and I figured anyone brave enough to ask deserved an answer. That's romantic, Clara sighed. That's practical, Matthew corrected. Right, Papa? Little of both, maybe. And then you came up here and lived happily ever after, Clara said. Evelyn laughed. Not quite. We came up here and figured things out as we went, still are. But you're happy now. Yeah, sweetheart. We're happy now. Good. Clara leaned against her mother. I'm going to marry someone brave, too. Someone who'll say yes when I ask. You got time to worry about that, Rowan said gruffly. I'm just planning ahead. Matthew rolled his eyes. You're 10. So? Mama was 22 when she asked Papa. That means I only got 12 years to figure out who I'm going to ask. You're not asking anyone anything until you're 30, Rowan said. That's not fair. Life's not fair. Get used to it. But he was smiling when he said it. And Clara was grinning too, because she knew she'd already won this argument just by making her father laugh. They sat together while the light faded, a family carved from desperation and built on stubborn refusal to quit. Not perfect, not easy, but real and lasting and worth every scar it had taken to build. When Matthew was 15, he asked the question Evelyn had been dreading. What really happened with you and Papa? They were in the kitchen, just the two of them. Rowan was in town. Clara was at Martha's for the weekend. What do you mean? The story you tell us, about how you met, it doesn't make sense. Why not? Because Papa doesn't do anything without a good reason, and marrying a stranger isn't a good reason unless something bad was happening. Matthew looked at her with eyes too old for his age. So what was really happening? Evelyn set down the dish she'd been washing. You're right, there's more to it. Will you tell me? She considered lying, keeping him safe from the ugly parts a little longer. But he was 15, old enough to understand that the world had teeth. So she told him about Horace, about the debt, about being sold into marriage and choosing Rowan instead because he seemed less dangerous than the alternative, about the siege and the fire and coming so close to losing everything. Matthew listened in silence. When she finished, he said, Uncle Dennis sold you. Yes. But you forgave him. Eventually, after he proved he'd changed. How'd you know he really changed, that it wasn't just an act? I didn't, not at first, but he kept showing up, kept trying, and eventually the effort mattered more than the past. Matthew was quiet for a long time. Then, Papa saved you. We saved each other. That's important. It wasn't one person rescuing the other. It was two people deciding to survive together. Is that what love is? Part of it. Love's a lot of things, but at its core, it's choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You think I'll find that? I think if you're brave enough to be honest about who you are and what you need, yeah, you'll find it. He nodded slowly, processing. I'm glad you asked Papa, even though it was scary. Me too. And I'm glad he said yes. So am I, baby. So am I. That winter was brutal, the worst in years. Snow piled up past the windows. Temperatures dropped so low that water froze inside the cabin despite the fire. They burned through firewood faster than Rowan could cut it. And in late January, Dennis showed up in the middle of a blizzard, half frozen and delirious. Rowan found him collapsed near the barn and dragged him inside. What the hell were you thinking? He demanded, stripping off Dennis's frozen clothes. Coming up here in this weather? Had to, Dennis mumbled through chattering teeth. Had to tell you. Tell us what? But Dennis had passed out. They warmed him by the fire, piled blankets on him, forced hot liquid down his throat when he was conscious enough to swallow. For 2 days he drifted in and out, fever burning through him. On the third day he woke clear-headed. I'm dying, he said without preamble. Evelyn, who'd been sitting beside him, went cold. What? Consumption. Doctor confirmed it 2 weeks ago. Got maybe a few months left. Dennis, I needed to see you, to see the kids, to say... He stopped, took a shaking breath. To say I'm sorry for everything, and to tell you that watching you build this life, this family, it's been the only good thing I've done. The only thing I'm proud of. Evelyn took his hand. You stayed sober. You were there for Matthew and Clara. You changed. Too late to matter. No, not too late. Never too late to be better than you were. Tears ran down Dennis's weathered face. I wasted so much time. Then don't waste what you have left. He stayed with them through the winter, too weak to make the trip back down, too sick to do much besides sit by the fire and watch the family he'd almost destroyed. Matthew and Clara didn't understand at first why Uncle Dennis couldn't play with them anymore, why he slept so much, why he looked so thin. But gradually, they figured it out. Is Uncle Dennis going to die? Clara asked one night. Evelyn didn't lie. Yes, sweetheart. When? Soon. I don't want him to. I know, but we don't get to choose these things. All we can do is make the time he has left as good as possible. So they did. The kids would sit with Dennis, telling him about their days, showing him their schoolwork, bringing him small treasures they found around the cabin. Rowan would help him to the window so he could watch the mountains. Evelyn would read to him when he was too tired to talk. And slowly, as winter loosened its grip, Dennis faded. He died on a clear morning in early March, surrounded by family, looking more peaceful than Evelyn had ever seen him. Thank you, he whispered with his last breath, for letting me be part of this. They buried him on a hillside overlooking the valley, near where Sarah lay. It felt right somehow. The man who'd failed so catastrophically and the woman who'd died too young, both resting in the same earth, both part of the same complicated story. He tried, Rowan said at the graveside. In the end, that's what mattered. He tried to be better. Is trying enough? Matthew asked. Sometimes. Sometimes it has to be. Clara put wildflowers on the grave. Goodbye, Uncle Dennis. Thank you for the carvings. They stood together in the spring sunshine, a family shaped by loss and choice and stubborn love, saying farewell to the man who'd set everything in motion by making the worst decision of his life. The years kept moving. Matthew grew tall and strong, learning his father's trade, developing a gift for working with wood that surpassed even Rowan's skill. Clara became fierce and brilliant, devouring books and asking questions nobody could answer. The cabin evolved with them. More rooms, better windows, small luxuries that spoke of stability instead of survival. And Rowan and Evelyn grew older together, silver threading through their hair, new lines marking their faces, bodies wearing down from years of hard work. But they held. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Rowan took Evelyn back to the church in Black Hollow, where they'd first married. The building was the same, still crooked, still drafty, but it felt different now, less like a trap and more like a beginning. 20 years, Evelyn said, looking around. Can you believe it? Not even a little bit. Any regrets? About marrying you? He pulled her close. Not one. You? I regret that it took me so long to ask. You asked exactly when you needed to. They stood in the empty church, holding each other, remembering the desperate strangers they'd been. We did good, Evelyn said finally. Didn't we? Better than good. We built something that lasts. Think the kids will stay on the mountain? Matthew will. He loves it up there. Clara? Rowan smiled. Clara's going to leave, see the world, come back when she's ready. How do you know? Because she's like you, brave enough to ask for what she wants, strong enough to survive when she doesn't get it. And Matthew's like you, stubborn and mean, loyal, steady, the kind of person people build their lives around. Rowan kissed her then, in the same church where they'd made promises neither of them had fully understood, and Evelyn tasted salt and coffee and 20 years of shared history. I love you, she said against his lips. Love you too. Always have, always will. They walked out into the sunshine hand in hand, leaving the past where it belonged and facing whatever came next together. On a golden October afternoon when Matthew was 23 and Clara was 21, the whole family gathered at the cabin for dinner. Matthew had brought his new wife, a quiet girl from Black Hollow, who looked at him the way Evelyn looked at Rowan. Clara was home from the territorial capital where she was studying law, full of stories about courtrooms and justice. They sat around the table that Rowan had built 20 years ago, eating food grown in their garden, drinking coffee roasted in town, filling the cabin with noise and laughter. Evelyn watched them all, her husband, her children, her daughter-in-law, all the complicated pieces of the life she'd built, and felt something settle deep in her chest. This was what she'd been fighting for. This exact moment. This table full of people who chose each other every day. This home that had survived fire and siege and winter and loss. This family. "Mama," Clara said, "you okay?" "I'm perfect," Evelyn replied, and meant it. After dinner, she and Rowan walked to Sarah's grave as the sun set. They did this sometimes. Came to sit with the woman who'd loved Rowan first, who died trying to bring life into the world, whose loss had nearly destroyed him. She would have liked Evelyn, Rowan said, not for the first time. "You think? She would have liked that you made me finish the cradle, that you made me live again instead of just surviving." He touched the headstone. "Thank you for what you gave me, for loving me when I didn't deserve it, for giving me a reason to build something that lasted." He said this every visit, a prayer or apology or acknowledgement. Evelyn never interrupted. "And thank you," he continued, "for letting me have this. A second chance, a family, everything I thought I'd lost forever." The wind moved through the pine trees, carrying the scent of autumn and smoke. "You think she hears you?" Evelyn asked. "I think if there's anything after, she does. And I think she's glad I didn't waste the time I had left trying to follow her into the dark." "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, the guilt would kill me." Evelyn took his hand. "Then believe it. Believe she wanted you to be happy. Believe you deserve what you've built." "Do I?" "Yes. 1,000 times yes." They stood together as the light faded. Two people who'd found each other in desperation and built something beautiful from the wreckage. When they walked back to the cabin, Matthew and Clara were on the porch teaching Matthew's wife a card game. Light spilled from the windows. Laughter echoed across the clearing. Home. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and lasting and worth every moment of fear and pain and stubborn love it had taken to create. "Ready?" Evelyn asked. Rowan looked at the cabin, at the family inside, at the life they'd carved from nothing, and smiled. "Yeah," he said, "I'm ready." They walked inside together, closing the door on the gathering darkness, and joined their family by the fire. And on Frostfang Ridge, where ghosts had once ruled and monsters had supposedly lived, warmth and laughter filled the night while the mountains stood eternal watch over the family that had finally found peace. Because that's what survival looks like in the end. Not perfection, not some fairy tale ending where everything works out smooth and easy. Just people choosing each other, building something together, refusing to quit even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's the truth nobody talks about. That love isn't finding someone perfect. It's finding someone worth fighting for and then doing the fighting. Every single day. Through loss and fear and the endless small disasters that make up a life. Rowan and Evelyn understood that. Had learned it in fire and blood in the quiet moments between crises when they'd chosen to stay instead of run. And they'd taught it to their children. Not through lectures or lessons, but by living it. By showing them that family isn't about being related. It's about showing up, about trying, about being brave enough to ask for help and strong enough to give it. The cradle in the corner of Matthew and his wife's cabin still held babies sometimes. The workshop Rowan had built still smelled like cedar and possibility. The mountain that had once seemed like a prison had become a home worth defending. And the bride who'd chosen the beast, who'd looked at a scarred, broken man and seen someone worth saving, had found that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for what you need. Even when you're terrified. Even when the odds are impossible. Even when everyone tells you you're making a mistake. Because the only real mistake is letting fear make your choices for you. Evelyn had learned that in a church in Black Hollow, on a February day when desperation made her bold enough to change her entire life with 4 words. Marry me. And Rowan had learned it when he'd said yes. Together they'd learned that survival isn't about being perfect or strong or unbreakable. It's about being brave enough to try. And when you fall, and you will fall, it's about having someone there to help you back up. That's what family means. That's what love is. And that's what made their story worth telling. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real.
gang? You guys ready, gang?
Holy frames. I have 2 keys. Boo boo keys!
Oh,
Welcome to the swamp.
I don't remember
The
this
fucking
either.
thunder down, motherfucker.
Welcome to the swamp, Coolio. You gonna learn how to make a gumbo today, boy. Am I the only one that went to the front door? Okay. Door. Holy fuck, it's dark. I can't see a damn thing. Oh, a key. Here we go. Up. You fucking thing, man. I literally can't see shit. Okay, wait, no, I can't. What? Zerti collected? What happened to my boy?